Good evening. You are now attending the Town of Corte Madera Planning Commission for Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. Tonight we have a big agenda, but we'll start with the roll call.
Okay, I will call the roll, starting with Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Bundy.
Here.
Commissioner Chase.
Here.
Commissioner Bendel.
Happy to be here.
And Commissioner Rizzo.
Here.
Great. And just as a reminder, if you are not here for the first item related to the village signs, we ask that you'll please mute yourself and turn your video cameras off, just so we reduce the number of actual video screens and people sort of for that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So tonight, as in every meeting, we have public comment for that which is not on tonight's agenda. If you are going to contribute a comment for the commission or staff to hear that relates to something that is not on tonight's agenda, you can stick your hand up. You can do the chat mechanism on the Zoom screen, or you can email at publiccomment@tcmmail.org, and Tracy will read your email if you do so. So, Tracy, I will ask you if you see any hands up.
I don't see any hands up. Doesn't look like there's any open questions either. No, I don't see any emails.
Okay. So that said, we will close the public comment section for tonight's agenda, or for that which is not on tonight's agenda. Excuse me, I'm rusty. So we will now go into our items that we have for tonight. We have 3 items, one new hearing and 2 business items that are preliminary reviews of subjects. So the first item is called 1618 Redwood Highway, the Village at Corte Madera. This is a design review and a precise plan amendment sign permit application for the Village at Corte Madera and revisions to the precise plan for highway-oriented tenant signs at 1618 Redwood Highway. So, Mr. Boyle.
Good evening, Chairman Chase and members of the Planning Commission, members of the public. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Showing freeway-oriented secondary signs. Yeah, so this is an application for, as Chairman Chase mentioned, design review, precise plan amendment, and sign permit amendment for the Village at Corte Madera to revise the precise plan that was adopted long ago, to modify the highway-oriented tenant signs on the west side of the Village of Corte Madera. The proposal overall increases the number of freeway-facing signs from the 11 that are currently allowed to a total of 22, with 11 new sign locations for these smaller secondary signs. Currently, signs are allowed on the large, I'll call them the large shed roofs. This proposal is to add smaller secondary signs, which will be smaller in height and smaller in size, and will be placed on the smaller roof sections of the village. So I'm sure you all know the location, the village on the east side of the freeway. And just a little bit of history of the freeway-oriented sign criteria over the years. When the shopping center was first established, there was no sign program. And then in 2012, they established a simple shelf sign criteria was established. And then in 2013, they made it a little bit more specific. The town adopted individual illuminated letters, specific colors, specific heights, and specific fonts were required to be used. And that's shown in that center center picture there. And many of you were involved in just 2 years ago. The village brought forward a proposal which was approved by the commission to create to allow signs to have individual fonts, unique colors, and unique logos. Example of that is the Charles Schwab that's here. There's a handful of so signs out there today that are using the new criteria. Majority of them are still the old 2013 criteria. In terms of where these new signs are going to be placed, this is a map that's also in your staff report. The red lines or bars indicate where the existing approved primary signs are located. These are the spots that have been established. I think I'm sure the applicant will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe 2 or 3 of them are vacant, but pretty much most of them are contain a sign on them today. And then the applicant is also asking for this pink spot here. They're asking for 1 more primary sign to be able to be allowed to be located there. And that sign would follow the regulations of the 2019 ordinance, which was approved 2 years ago. The main aspect of this application are the blue lines, and that is where the applicant is requesting to have secondary edge signs to be located. Similar in terms of their structure and the way they sit on the building. As you'll see, they're just smaller. They're smaller signs on smaller parts of the building. Backing up just a little bit, this is that 1 additional primary sign that they're asking for on the northern end of the center. To the left here is Nordstrom's. So that's where they're asking for the new primary sign. The secondary signs will be, these are examples here on the left of how they would look on a smaller shed part of the roof. Again, showing logos, various fonts, and various colors. This is an example of one of the small sheds without any depicting sign, of course. And then down below is just, this was in your package showing some of the dimensions of the signs and how they will be placed on the building. In terms of specific dimensions, this is just a comparison of the size of the primary signs compared to the secondary signs. This isn't every single one, but these are the main differences. I think the applicant has a little bit more detail they'll share with us. The primary signs can be as tall as 2 feet, whereas the secondary signs can only be 1 foot 8 inches. Maximum sign length is 30 feet for primary and 16 feet for a secondary. The secondary signs will be illuminated using the same criteria as the primary signs. Oh, and that's and then so that's the again, these signs are designed and are proposed by the applicant. They're seeking additional visual cues and visual interest for passerbyers on Highway 101. They have several tenants that have requested signs, but given the limited number of primary signs, that's why they're asking for these additional signs at this time. Seem to be advancing my slide. Huh. Sorry about that. And what happened to my, they got turned off. So that basically concludes my report, and my recommendation in the staff report is that staff is able to make all of the findings for design review and for the precise plan amendment, that these are signs that will be an attractive addition to the center and will not be, will not significant impact on the architecture or the design of the center as it exists today. I've included, and it's not showing up, I need to change my PowerPoint. I've included the design review findings there. If you want me to bring those up and discuss any of those, but basically that concludes my report. Again, recommending approval and open to any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Phil.
And there is a, Phil, there is a resolution in your packet as well as an attachment that is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There that for the commission's benefit there. So.
Yeah.
There are the findings coming up. Yeah, 1 of 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that.
So we have the opportunity from the commission to ask Mr. Boyle any questions at this point. I'll start with you, Margaret. Do you have any questions for Mr. Boyle regarding this application?
The only thing that I kind of thought, and I don't even know if it's that important, but did you talk to anybody like the Highway Patrol or the Corte Madera Police or anybody? Would it, because they're smaller and maybe set back at a different angle, harder to see and be a greater distraction to cars going by?
I did not talk to anyone in Highway Patrol or Corte Madera Police regarding that. I haven't, and that hasn't come up in the past, you know, in the various signs projects that I brought to the town, both for the village and some for the town center.
I just thought because maybe because it's at an angle, it would be harder to see, so people would be kind of looking rather than driving, but maybe it's not that significant.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same angles as the primary ones, as you can see here. They're the same angles, but yes, they are smaller.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I read through the criteria. It didn't seem like there was any, other than what we're reviewing now, there was no other changes to the sign criteria, Phil?
No.
Um,
That's it.
And then my second question is, I noticed that there was only steel shelves in the locations where we have the primary now. I'm assuming that the landlord's going to add more shelves?
Yes. Yeah, this one image here shows the signs and the shelf.
Oh, okay. I have no more questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Bundy, do you have any questions for staff?
Phil, the additional primary sign, it looks like it's next to an existing primary sign, but the space isn't quite as long. So the figures could be as 2 feet high, but it looks like it wouldn't be 30 feet long, or can it do that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Commissioner Bundy. I believe that is a shorter space. I imagine the applicant can talk to us about that. Yeah, when you look at this pink line here, it's certainly shorter than these other reds. Yeah, I think the applicant can probably address that, whether that's going to, you know, limit the size of that primary sign, like lengthwise.
No further questions.
All right. And Commissioner Metcalf.
My question had been about the length of that particular addition. I think what we're seeing tonight is really a carrying on of all the issues that were discussed and settled in the past. So there really shouldn't be a lot of issues that respect what is being added.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. So now I don't have any questions regarding this application. So we'll go right to the presentation by the applicant. Who will be making that presentation tonight?
I will be making it, Sudhish Mohindru. Good evening, members of the commission, the public, and staff. Phil, I'll share the screen now then. Is that okay?
Yes, you should be able to.
Oops. me start by from the beginning. Well, this complex it's sort of interesting when you look at it from the air, which very few people get to do. It has a rather complex geometry. And I think it has, in some ways, it has been very successful that it has given the impression that it's not over 1,000 feet long when you are there. And I'm a frequent shopper. I've been for years. I've worked at the town center since the 80s. And so we've seen sort of this grow. If you come in from the parking lot side, what's so-called the front side, you can see that unlike most malls, the distance between Macy's and Nordstrom is you don't perceive yourself being in front of this humongous mall, let's say, where you just, and that is because the geometry is such that it narrows your view. And because it narrows your view, you are focused more what's in front of you. So there are different places to come in and so on. However, the problem, I think, has been over the years that on the freeway side, it hasn't really achieved that objective. It sort of blends, everything kind of blended. And so there was an attempt made, of course, about 10 years ago, as Phil said, to do signage. But in my opinion, we were not part of that process. But in my opinion, it wasn't comprehensive enough, meaning that the buildings had the same color, the signs all had the same color as a control, and it sort of hardly made a dent to, let's say, the feeling of a complex comprised of different buildings, let's say, as opposed to one continuous large shed-like appearance. So when back in 2019, when I was part of this process, we looked at it more comprehensively. By that, I mean, we completely altered the color scheme of these sheds facing the freeway, similar to what had been evolved and done on the parking lot side. We added much more fine-tuned definition of what kind of sign, individualized logos, as Phil indicated, the colors, but some subtle things we added too. We added a level of quality to these signs that was open-ended before. So we as a technical matter, what the detail of the sign is, it made it restricted to very, yes, you can have your logo, but it has to be very classy in the way it is presented in terms of detail. Well, we think that has had a very positive impact. And actually that even our tenants think that, because prior to this 2019, we were actually not able to fill those slots because the tenants felt that they really wasn't doing anything much for them. So I think overall it elevated the presence of the whole complex on the freeway, because the signs are so sort of intertwined with the architecture, the shed architecture, and that they're really completely in sync with them. I do want to mention one other thing, which is, I think everybody, it almost goes without saying, we're in a very challenging retail environment. Retail, especially mall retail, is facing I would say, an existential crisis of existence almost. And I'm involved in a number of malls where we are completely repurposing them to different uses and so on. I won't go into why that is. I mean, we all know that. So I think here, if we step back and look at it, we sort of have an envious, I think, position. We have very good tenants here. However, it is getting a little harder to retain them because they are expecting more incentives. And that is one of the incentives, I think, that we've been asked, now that we've improved this side, to work on. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So as you can see, in the 2019 effort, these signs were added. Pottery Barn is actually one of the signs that I think has come out really well. They did conform to the new signs.
Started.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So here, this is showing you where the new signs will go. The two red arrows are the secondary sign locations. And if I go to the next one here, same thing. The one on the left by Nordstrom, that is the primary sign that was being questioned. And I think my answer to that is the way the guidelines have been written, yes, that sign, even though it is a primary sign, which means it's next to a maximum 2 feet high sign, it can be 2 feet high, but its length cannot be 30 feet because we are using a criteria of how much separation should be there from the corner, from the two corners, let's say. So it will be a smaller sign in length. I do want to say that one more thing, that is, we don't expect, we expect very few tenants to achieve even a 30-foot. Most tenants don't have name that long. So if you have names like Gap and even names like Banana Republic, Tesla, 2 foot high letter, you're not going to get more than 15, 16 feet in any case. So that 30 feet is somewhat of an outlier there. This actually is Kelsey. I should give credit to Kelsey from our office. This is a photo montage thing. This does not exist. So I just want to bring that up. It looks almost like it's there. The Child's Delight, Microsoft, that is just an example of how, if the secondary signs are approved, what they would look like. And you can see that the idea is to marry the sort of the architectural element of a corner and almost like this veranda to the signs, so they really kind of fit in. The other thing I wanted to say is that what is just my observation has been that as we have done these changes with the colors and even with the Tesla activity in the back, people is starting to change from a back to something, another way to come into the center. I, as a long-term customer, I usually park on this side. Maybe it's because I want to go there and see how these signs are looking, but I park on this side. It's shorter walk. You can easily find a parking space and you can get into the heart of the interior walkway. So I think things are changing, and this is another way to make it seem like it's perfectly safe to park there, it's perfectly nice to park there and walk over. I think I won't go into the details, but anymore. I'll be repeating myself, but Phil has covered the sizes. The one thing I do want to say that the metal band that we are going to put in, the metal shelf, so to speak, that also is going to be proportionate, meaning it's instead of a 4-foot projection, it'll have a 2-foot projection. So in some ways, what we are doing through this effort with slightly smaller height of signs, not much less, it's 21 inches as opposed to 24, but and closer to the building, these sheds, as you can see, the secondary sheds are a little bit smaller and they're a little bit further back from the freeway. So all of this is almost going to enhance the sort of three-dimensional aspect. We're almost exaggerating the three-dimensional aspect so they don't look like they're all in one line. I think I will stop at that, and that's I'll be happy to go back to any slide that you would like. If you have any questions.
Okay. So I will ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you, starting with you, Ms. Phyllis.
No questions.
Okay. Thank you. Margaret, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, Bob, do you have any?
No questions at this time.
All right, Mr. Rizzo.
I have a question. Will a brand be able to advertise on more than one location, or are they going to be limited to one location?
I believe they'll be limited to one location. Yes, and we can confirm that. I mean, the idea is that we shouldn't really have two signs that belong to the same unless they have two separate locations. For example, I'm just going to throw it out loud. If Restoration Hardware has a store along with their building and the restaurant, if they're distinctly separate operations, I think that, in our opinion, should be allowed. Otherwise, it's really one tenant, one sign.
So it wouldn't matter if they had a different name like Restoration Baby or something.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. If
Yeah, okay. So the name would be
Restoration
different,
Hardware
but
has a
the
baby,
company.
they
Mhm.
could do two signs
Got it.
because they have two physical locations.
Understand. Thank you.
I'm going to ask a simple question about the value of the sign. So you've been saying, or we're hearing that the tenants or potential tenants are requesting the signage. They want more visibility. So I'm just curious, how does a tenant decide if the signage is of value to them, or is it just that it's a sign that they feel more represented?
Well, first of all, it's somewhat independent of their location. So, for example, you don't have to belong in that building to have a sign here.
Okay.
That's one. And it's, I Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really first come, first serve. There is complex issues here. I think that's what you're referring to. As you drive by, whether you're going northbound or southbound, first of all, you're only seeing 50% of the signs in your direction. You don't want to turn your head and look back, but so it depends on which direction you're going and what time of the day. The visibility tends to change. There is also some vegetation that is got some openings and some interruptions, which overall I think is not a negative as long as it's controlled, because it also makes this, you're not bombarded with tons of signs, which also, you don't register a name if you have 15 names visible at one time. So I think there's a sort of a self-leveling kind of thing. So tenants will have to make their own decision as to what space is available and what value they think is for a particular location. I'm sure, Stan, you can address that more if you like. I believe I don't think the value, I believe it's a negotiated value. Stan, are you still there?
I'm here. This is Stan Hoffman. I'm the general manager. Just a quick history. The typical shopping center model years ago was two anchors, two department stores at the village, and they drew traffic to the small shops. Today, as most of you are aware, some of our small shops like Apple and Tesla doing substantially more business than our department stores, but they are hampered by lack of identity. And our leasing people are telling us that it's quite a fight to attract new quality tenants to the shopping center. And what they're saying is, if we're going to come to the village, we want, and we're new to Marin County, we want the public to know that we're here. And while we do have two sign places currently unoccupied, they are all leased. And we have future tenants that are telling us that we need to do something about the signage in order for them to consider coming to the village. So it really depends on the store, but we will have by next year, we'll have 4 electric car dealers in the center. And everyone knows that Tesla's there, but they don't know about the other 3. And they're all telling us, we need identity. We need to let the public know we're in Marin, we're in Corte Madera. So I believe that it's really critical to our ability to attract and future tenants and quality tenants, to give them what they're asking for, and that is to let the public know that they're there with these additional signs. Does that answer your question?
It does to a large extent. What I worry about is that in a period of time, the tenants say, well, geez, these signs aren't really of any value to us. And we will have then allowed the construction of a continuous ribbon of signage that the tenants feel like is not doing them any service. So that's my question. So that's why.
Well, the ones that have signs are very happy that they have them, and the ones that don't have them are very unhappy that they don't. So we have to assume that will be the model going forward.
Got it. Okay. Anything else that the applicant would like to present for the commission?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, Phil, do you want to put up a screen that is your model screen of the center just from above before we go to public comment?
Go on mute there, Phil.
There we go. Okay, so we have something up in front of us to look at. So at this point, we will open this up to public comment on this item, and we will have 3 minutes to make a comment. I will time you myself right here on my little handy iPhone, and then I will tell you when you're approaching your 3 minutes. So, do we have any hands up, Tracy?
I don't see any hands up. There is one hand up. I stand corrected. I have Don Wilborg here. Don, I've allowed you to talk. You would just need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was on the board of design here in Corte Madera when this shopping center went through the design process. And I don't remember if we had a sign program or not, but I do remember at about the same time we were going through a sign program for the little shopping center at the end of past the DMV, the one down there. And we were going to put in, the requirements we put on them was Helvetica Medium was the only lettering that they could use. And, you know, so that went out of style very, very quickly. But this is something that my fellow design people, you know, felt was really important. Is it possible to go take a look at the roof, that big roof plan of the shopping center?
Phil, do you want, do you want me? Okay.
There was one really big one.
Oh, the big one. I could share it again.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
So I want to show you the process and why this is a problem in my mind.
Let me go back to this one.
Okay, that's perfect. If you look at the Nordstrom building over there on the left-hand side, you'll see that there is a pyramid shaped light well that goes above the escalators there. We spent almost a whole meeting, this is the board of design, deciding whether it was going to be that shape or whether it was just going to be a simple tent type of structure. You can see that it's hardly a pimple on this whole thing, yet we designers felt it was so important that we put our 2 cents into this thing. One of the commissioners said, hey, I can see it from my house up on Christmas Tree Hill. And it amounts to nothing. And what I'm saying to you all is that the sign program, the people that know this the best, the people that are going to really understand their program and what needs to happen is the applicant themselves. None of us, this is my experience of having been through all of this stuff and hundreds of meetings throughout the Bay Area. We don't know what the applicant knows. I don't see anything wrong with their sign program. They should be allowed to do whatever they want on there. And one of the other things that really sort of has always bothered me about this center is that we put our 2 cents in and the center was dummied down. The architecture on it was much better, at least in my opinion, than what we have now. But it was because we restricted them so much and did so many things, we got an inferior product. So my advice is to let them do what they want to do with their signs. You've already got your restrictions in place past this thing.
Thank you, Don. You are out of time. I appreciate your commentary. I really do. Thank you. Anyone else? Tracy?
Yes, we have Laura von Wahlberg.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not at this meeting for the sign part of the meeting, but since I'm here, I just wanted to comment on one thing that Stan had said. And also to say, I really like the history that Don shared. But I worked at Benefit Cosmetics, which is a cosmetic retailer, for 10 years. And I disagree about what he said about retailers really wanting signage on the highway in the back of the shopping center. I think what's more important to them is foot traffic. And I think it's actually foot traffic that is lacking in the village, more so than like Town Center or the Marin Country Mart. So I'm definitely in favor of limiting the signs facing the highway, just, you know, kind of making sure it doesn't start to look like an outlet type of thing or similar. That's all.
Thank you very much.
You have one more hand up. I'm sorry, I don't have a first name, but the last name is Robinson. I've allowed you to talk. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yes, Jim Robinson at 25 Ash in Corte Madera. I think the report was well presented by our town staff, and appreciate the comments, questions from the commission, and also from the applicant. I support what has been recommended. I think it's pretty modest sign proposal. I think that whatever we can do to entice, induce, or attract people to what I consider to be, along with the town center, the lifeblood, and also our sort of main street in the town of Corte Madera. And I think it's a timely application, and would recommend the Planning Commission support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Tracy?
Don't see anyone else with their hand up. No questions posed in the Q&A and no emails either, Chair Jason.
Okay. We'll give it a heartbeat here for a second and see if anyone sticks their hand up in the air, because we will close this item to public comment momentarily. And I mean momentarily. So
There's
yeah.
a hand up. I think this individual may have already talked. 1 second. This is Don Wilborg.
I just have a question. When your picture shows up,
Sorry,
I mean, I
Peter.
see a picture of you, but I don't see anything of me. Does that mean I'm not visible?
That's correct. Right.
Okay, and that's fine. If you don't want to see me, that's okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Don. Okay. So that said, we will close the public comment section of this item, and we'll turn it back to the commission here to discuss. So we've seen the signs out on the village. I hope everybody drove by and checked it out again at night just to see what they look like, or in the daytime. But I'll start with you, Margaret, and see what you have to contribute to the idea of these signs being added.
I don't have any problem with making the necessary findings. I think the proposal is fine. I think the presentation was good. The only thing I object to is 3 car dealerships. We could have some nice clothing stores. But that's not my choice. I would pass the proposal.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Dr. Bundy.
Yeah, I'd just like to make an observation. I think when we discussed this and approved this in 2019, we also beat up Stan over the landscaping, which was really in deteriorating and in terrible shape, as we see in the photograph here. And now Stan has overseen putting in oak trees and plantings that have matured, softened the view from the freeway, look really nice. And the landscaping that's now almost finished off on the rest of the center has really enhanced the center. So I think Stan came through when we complained about that in relationship to the signage before. And I think the signage that we approved has been perfectly fine from the standpoint of not overwhelming anybody on the freeway with light pollution or just with too much. And I support the additional secondary signage.
Okay, that's what we're after there. So if that's your commentary, thank you. Mr. Rizzo.
Yes. Well, I think when you guys approved the amendment to a few years ago, allowing the brands to use their own fonts and logos was a huge upgrade. It allows the scale of these signs to really stay a little bit smaller and still be eye-catching and noticeable. I think the difference in scale will make the total sign composition a little bit more interesting from the freeway. And I can also make all the findings to approve.
Thank you very much. Phyllis.
As I said earlier, I think all of the work and discussion took place about 2 years ago when we approved the original signs, the colors, the fonts, etc. And this is, to me, is just a continuation on a slightly smaller scale. So I certainly could make the findings.
Okay. Well, I won't belabor the point any further and say that I will join in recommending that we adopt this resolution. So do we have someone who will make a motion for this resolution number 21-011?
I'll do it.
Okay.
In the matter of design review, precise plan amendments, and sign permit applications for the village at Corte Madera, and revisions to the precise plan number 12-001 for highway-oriented tenant signs at 1618 Redwood Highway, PL 210070, date September 14th.
Second.
All right, Mr. Wolf.
Okay, I'm gonna assume that the motion was to approve there, correct, Commissioner
Yes.
Bundy? Okay, great. So start with Commissioner Bundy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bendel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf,
Yes.
and Chairman Chase.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Bill, you want to read the appeals, right?
Yes, following action by the planning commission at a public hearing or meeting, any decision of the commission may be appealed to the town council within 10 calendar days of today. Appeal forms are available at the planning department and also on our website, and there's a $300 filing fee.
All right. Thank you very much for a good presentation. And
Thank you.
We'll close this item out and we'll move directly to our business items tonight. We have 2 items for preliminary hearing tonight. The first one is 317 Redwood Avenue, and the second one is 24 Mohawk Avenue. So we'll start with the 317 Redwood Avenue. This again is a preliminary review of a proposal for construction of a new two-story, 3,207 square foot single-family home and the demolition of the existing residence at 317 Redwood Avenue. Please go ahead, Mr. Boyle, with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Chase. So this is back to you. The commission originally saw this on June 8th. And the applicant heard testimony from the commission, of course, and the public, and went back and made some changes to the proposal. I didn't present at that initial preliminary review. I didn't present a PowerPoint and had the applicant mainly do it, but I've created one for this hearing. And so they are back with some changes that they have made and some additional public outreach and staff consultation that they have had. Just briefly, the project is located at 317 Redwood, just west of the intersection of Redwood Avenue and Corte Madera Avenue. As you're climbing up Christmas Tree Hill, it is in the Christmas Tree Hill specific plan. This is the proposed site plan, rather busy. It's easier to see obviously on the paper that you've been given. But again, showing the existing proposed building is basically a rectangle shown here. And the building is being moved closer to the street than the existing building to accommodate its size and also to not have to remove the retaining wall or do any grading work in the rear of the parcel. So that's your proposed site plan. Neighboring garage here to the east, neighboring house to the east, neighboring outbuilding to the west, and then their home is up here a little farther away. That is 315 Redwood. Proposed first level is a great room, kitchen, dining room, living room, and with as well as sort of an auxiliary living room down here as well. And then you've got laundry room, bathroom, and the stair leading to the second level. Also the two-car garage is here. I didn't mention before, the proposal is to completely demolish the existing home and build this home in this place. Proposed second level consists of the master suite, which is here, bathroom, closet, master bath, and three bedrooms here, two on the front facing the street, a guest bedroom back in here, and then a total of two baths for those three bedrooms. There's also an upper family room here at the top of the stair. So that's your proposed second level. The front elevation is shown here. The changes that I'll go through the changes a little bit more at the end, but also I'll just show them visually here. Changes that took place. As you can see here, this is the original previous submittal had a height at this point. This has been dropped 1 foot, not approximately 1 foot 9 inches. And in doing so, these peaks have come down. Also in doing that, they've reduced the size of these windows in the front. Those are the major changes to really the only changes to the front elevation. Real elevation, again, the whole roof line is coming down as shown here with the two lines, and really not a significant change in the rear elevation from the previous public hearing. The proposed east elevation was one where there's a lot of conversations with the neighbor to the east, and she requested some additional mitigation measures to increase her privacy. The applicant heard those requests and have made these windows here that are a little bit grayer. So these are, they're non-operable, these lower sections, and they're also opaque. They will be, and I believe the sill, excuse me, the sill have been brought up as well. again, to minimize the ability of people in these upper rooms. This is the master suite, and this is that upper level living room, to minimize their ability to look down into the yard of the neighbor to the east. To the west side, not a significant change at all from the last, except for, again, the reduce in height is seen here as well. So this is a more of an existing than house today versus the proposed house. This isn't prelim 1 and prelim 2. So the existing home quite small with a floor area ratio of 15%. Much larger home, this is going up to 38%. Lot coverage significantly increased. Side setbacks are actually, the side setbacks are increasing with the new home, going from 4 feet to 6. The front setback, however, is being reduced, as I talked about before, from roughly 30 feet to about 10 feet. Again, just reminding you, this is in the Christmas Tree Hill overlay where front setbacks are variable. And so there aren't specific criteria that like there are in the flats or other parts of town for a front setback. Rear setback is just slightly changing by about 7 feet. Height is going from a single story home of 15 to a 2-story home of approximately just a little over 29 feet. And we're going from 2 uncovered parking spaces to 2 covered parking spaces. No variances are requested for this project. Just to give you sort of an overview of things that have changed since the June prelim. As I said, the roof height has been reduced by about 1.9 inches. Second level windows, as I pointed out, some of the windows have been reduced in size. The fence at the front of the east property line has been reduced in height just to kind of soften that corner. I can show you that if you like. I can go back. And then fire resistant English laurel hedges have been planted along the eastern property line as it's going up the hill to accommodate and to meet the request of the folks that live at 10 Hill Path. I met with them, the applicant, and the other neighbor, as well as the fire marshal. We had a site visit, and that's one of the results of that site visit is to install those fire resistant English laurels to provide a hedge along that fence line to minimize the impact to 10 Hill Path there up above and able to look down into the backyard of this property. Like I said, the revised landscape plan has been approved by the fire marshal. Lastly, just some things that didn't change and that the commission and the public requested were the home has not been moved back further from the street. That was brought up by some commissioners, not all, as I recall. So the home has not been moved. The overall size of the home has not been changed, and that was a comment by some individuals. So the overall square footage is still the same. And both the redwood tree and the mulberry tree are still proposed to be removed. I go in a little bit more about the trees in the staff report. But those are the items that have not been changed post the June preliminary review. So that concludes this, my presentation. Again, this preliminary review number 2. So there's no resolution, there's no decision being made by the commission. And I believe the applicant has a presentation they'd like to share with you. That concludes my report.
I have a question for you, Phil, but I will start with the commissioners here to check in with you before we go to that presentation. So Commissioner Metcalf, do you have any questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Margaret?
Not right now, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Rizzo?
I got a few. I believe, Phil, that the correct height is 26.3 now, right? Not 29. I think the old one was 29, just as a quick correction, I think. It came down. At least on the drawings, it says 26.3.
That's a good there on their table. It shows 29.8. Let me check with that.
It could, I think their last proposal, they had it at 29 or something, but anyway,
Yes, I think you're correct, Commissioner Rizzo. Yeah.
and, as
26.
far as the front yard setbacks, I know that they vary on Christmas Tree Hill. Did the applicant just propose where the house was sited? And that's how we came up with the front yard setback at 10 feet?
Yeah, it may be, I may be kind of misspeaking when I say that the front yard setback, maybe more accurately, the location of the home in relation to the front property line is X number of feet, 10 feet. The setback, is variable. So, but yes, they chose where the building is placed in relation to the front property line.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. And Dr. Bundy?
No questions.
Okay. My question was similar to Mr. Rizzo's, and you have 29 feet on your presentation there. And if it drops 1'8", there's no way it could go from being under 30 foot to being 29 foot if it drops 1'8".
Yes, thank you for that. That's my oversight. And yeah, I do. It does say that in the drawings, and I'll have the applicant correct their data table shows 29.8.5. So, but yeah, you are correct.
Okay. Well, we'll want to get that straight.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, then, who's going to make presentations for the applicant?
My name is Dan Morgan. I'm the applicant. I'm going to address a few of the comments and then turn it over to Tyler, who's the architect, to make the presentation, if that's okay.
Okay, please.
First of all, I want to speak to the setback issue. There was some confusion, I think, at the last meeting. There's a dimension on the plans that is 15.5 feet, 15.5 feet setback. And because the house is on a curve, the radius is different. But what's important to me and what's important to parking is that the garage has at least 20 feet clearance from the back of sidewalk to the front of the garage. And that's what we have. And I think the story poles are now up, and hopefully many people have seen them, but the house is designed to maximize the backyard, maximize the the parking, and because of the radius, that's something that we need to address. We did listen to your comments, and I've met with the neighbors. I've done extensive concessions and trying to get everybody happy with what we're doing. I've flown a drone to see what the views are going to look like without the redwood. I firmly believe, and I think the fire marshal confirmed, that what exists now on the property is a much more fire attracting product than what we're intending. The new home will be without the redwood, which is a fire hazard. It'll be WUI safe, and it'll be a much safer situation than what we have now. As far as the size goes, the size is, I've seen some comments that the size is too big. What we're finding is that families want to live in Corte Madera, and a 4-bedroom home is quite desirable. So I'm available for any other questions. With that, I'll turn it over to Tyler to address the technical issues. And please, Tyler, address the height issue as well, because we have lowered it significantly. By the way, we've gone to the neighbors' houses and looked at the views, and we're doing everything we can to minimize the impacts on our neighbors.
I think you're on mute
muted.
there.
Try to
On
read it.
mute, yep.
I got it. You can hear me now? Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to clarify the height issue. It is 26 feet 3 inches, and it was my oversight not to correct the data table. The main thing we did is we carefully went down the list and tried to address these issues. And I think that Phil did a very good job in explaining the fundamental things, mainly with the roof overhead. And this came at some sacrifice, some compromise. We had to lowered the height of the top floor, which not only helps with the overall height of the building, but also helps with the privacy issue. That's been lowered by 6 inches, which in turn lowered the ceiling height below it by 6 inches. And it also lowered the lower roof that sort of embraces the front of the building also by 6 inches, and reduced the mass and bulk of that portion of the building which is closest to the street, which is that lower roof. The upper roof is about 6 feet further back, and it too has been reduced as described by Phil, about 1 foot 9.5 inches. I think the biggest change though is we reduced the slope of the roof from a 12-inch slope to a 10-inch slope, which definitely brought the height down even more. And because of that, because of the geometry of doing that, those gable ends, that triangle is now a shorter triangle, which has to accommodate a smaller window. So we were forced to make all the windows in the gables, which there are 6. All of those windows are smaller, especially the ones at the back. They're substantially smaller. The ones at the back had to be reduced a lot, primarily because of the privacy concerns and the windows on the east side of the upstairs. We wanted those to be fixed, and the bottom portions of them to be opaque. Therefore, we needed the big windows to be the egress windows. So they had to be double hung windows, and you can't get an operable window in the width that we had before. So those had to be substantially narrower. So all of this comes at a substantial sacrifice to mainly the interior volumes of the building. So, but I still think that it's very nice, and it's still going to be a very beautiful home. So those are the primary changes, and that's just elaborating on what Phil has already told you. Other things that I should mention is that Dan and Dimitri, who I think is with us, have gone to an extraordinary effort in the neighborhood outreach, especially the immediate neighbors, but also the neighbors beyond. And they've done a fantastic job, and they've been working very, very closely with all neighbors, especially the ones that are adjoining the property. The landscape plan has been altered in order to address their concerns, and we went to the trouble of having an on-site meeting since our last Zoom meeting, where the fire chief was there, Phil was there, the neighbors were there, the landscape architect was there, the arborist was there, Dan, myself, and we had a big meeting of everyone on site with the story poles up to see the implications of what's been going on and how it's affecting everyone. So they've done a neighborhood outreach effort larger than I've ever seen. And so that's about it with the with my comments there. Moving the house back, it's problematic only because the rear area of the site, because of the nature of the site, the level space is so limited. And I think we could make some gesture by sort of inching the thing back, but I don't think it would be noticeable from the front, but it would be noticeable from the back. Every inch is really quite precious back there because the home effectively is not going to have much of a backyard. And we're designing this to be a family home, and we want it to be functional and desirable, and the people who live there, we want them to be content. So it also had an effect on our drainage system, which it too would have to have been revised in order to accommodate moving things around. I want to point out on the site plan, which Phil showed you on A 1.0, the very busy site plan, is that I have delineated the standard 9 by 20 parking place in front of the garage. And I think that off-street parking issue is the thing that, primarily put the house in the position that it is in. It's 9 by 20, 2 9 by 20 parking places, which is adequate and comfortable for a parking space. And I think that those are not very evident, but they're big rectangles with dashed X's in them. And I wanted just to point those out so that you were aware of those. Fire was a big issue, and it's an issue that we have addressed very thoroughly, and we're in close contact with the, although I should say the landscape architect, Brad Eichste, who may be here with us, is in close contact with Chief Martin, and he seems to be satisfied with what we have put forward in terms of the vegetation management plan and the planting that we have proposed, and everything regarding fire. And in terms of the building itself, it will be fire safe only because it has to be fire safe to meet present California code. So we've made a big effort there as well. And I could go into a lot of details that I don't think are that important, but I just wanted to say, and I don't think I really articulated it last time, but this building, the design of it, there has been a lot of very thoughtful effort gone into it. Particularly the form of the second floor and the roof, and the articulation of the walls, and the general massing of it, and the way it steps in from the side yards and steps in from the front, and keeps the tallest portion of the building towards the middle. And also we put a lot of effort into this design, and I think it's a very thoughtful design. And I don't think that the drawings, the black and white architectural drawings, nor even the three-dimensional renderings really do it justice. I mean, I think that there's a lot of qualities to this that are very subtle and understated and nuanced. And I'm convinced that when this thing is built, it's going to be a very special and distinctive property. I think that it will be very much appreciated by the neighborhood, and we've gotten some very positive comments in that regard to a lot of the nearby neighbors. So that's all I wanted to say. I think this, just personally, I think this project means a lot to me, and I just think it's going to be a really distinctive and beautiful home. I think it's It's subtle. I love the fact that it has this sort of welcoming front porch in the front. I like the proportions of it. I like everything about it, and I think it's something that kind of grows on a person in time. But it's not, you know, grand and ostentatious, and it's simple and it's understated without being ornate. And I think it's going to be a very positive asset to that street and that neighborhood. And that's about all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. I'm going to check with the commissioners here to see if they have any questions regarding the application of you and or Mr. Morgan before we move on to public comment. So Phyllis, do you have any questions for the gentleman?
No questions.
Okay. Dr. Bundy.
No questions.
All right. Margaret Vandell.
I'm looking at in the plans. I just want, what is the, and the back, the southwest perspective plan? And what is the measurement from the base of the pergola to where that row of landscaping is going to start?
The base of the pergola,
right,
to where that landscaping is going to start.
Right, the bushes that you've drawn in there.
I can tell you that.
Okay.
I just happen to have it open. The pergola is supported by some posts.
Right.
And there's a series of double posts. And the posts are approximately 8'9" from the post supporting that pergola to the edge of where the landscaping would be.
And is that what you're considering to be the backyard?
I'm afraid that's it. It's the terraced area. It's sort of a semi-hardscaped area below that pergola, and then there's about that much space more beyond it.
And so you're saying is it paved or not paved? It looks paved.
It's only paved under the pergola where you see those rectangles, and beyond that it would probably be grass or artificial grass or something along those lines.
Okay, and then I'm assuming where that line of landscaping starts is where the lot starts inclining.
Yes,
uphill.
Definitely heads up right there.
Yeah.
And there's a retaining wall there. It's a wooden retaining wall, which is existing, which is still in good shape, which would remain. And then there's
and then the tree, the
and then the trees. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Rizzo, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a few. So those stepped retaining walls at the back where the redwood trees are, I mean, I know it's an estimation right now. Are you assuming they're right around 30 inches each, or they're not?
Oh, at the very back where it
yeah, where it steps, I can't get a grasp if it's, they're tall or.
Yes, let me give you a straight answer here. They are not particularly tall. I think it's like a couple of feet and then another couple of feet. There's a little raised planter there at the very back.
Okay, and all the window sills facing west towards 325.
Yeah.
Are those all 36 inches high? It looks like they are.
You mean the height of the windows or
window sills?
The sills. No,
They look like they're the same height.
They will vary. They're 36 inches high. The little ones are at the
I just mean to the sill from the floor to sill.
yeah, 36 inches is that's the sill height of the smaller ones, and then the main one, the big one, has let me find that, a sill height of 36 inches. So I guess they're all 36, yeah.
Okay, and then I know that there was you guys had met a lot of neighbors out there. Was Mrs. Hubert in attendance to talk about her upper windows? Because I know there was a letter that came in. Did anybody talk to her about
Yes,
her privacy concerns?
he was present, and we spoke to her extensively and spent quite a lot of time with her. I think Dan, he can elaborate on his interactions with her. If Dan is still available.
Yes, Dan's here.
Hi, Dan.
We met with Jackie, and she was very kind in letting us go upstairs and look at the views from her windows with the story poles in place. And I maintained with her that if we remove the redwood tree, you're going to have this big expansive view. You're going to give up a little bit over here, which really isn't that much when you look at the relationship of the story poles with the view, which I have, and I can share those in another forum. So I flew a drone, and I had this great expectation of when the redwood tree is gone, she'll have this beautiful view. The problem is there's another redwood tree behind my tree. So that didn't prove to be as great of the asset. I thought her view was going to double, but it's going to view another redwood tree, albeit further away, and it will be more expansive. I still think the net effect of the project that is proposed is a positive for that for that house, for that home. And again, I'm very sensitive to my neighbors. I want to do whatever I need to do to make them happy. I don't want to negatively impact anyone, and I'm all about doing that. So we met with Jackie, and then I saw her letter, and we haven't talked since, but with the comments from tonight's meeting, we'll hopefully work out something that works for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
I think the question that I might have is pretty well answered. Of the three elements that are not changed in the current plan, you didn't reduce the size, you didn't move the house back, and you did lower it, but you didn't do anything at the backyard because you want to keep that retaining wall back there and not reduce the size of the backyard. So those were some comments that people felt the house was too big. So how would you address that commentary about the house being too big? Simply, why not drop it in size by, I don't know, by some manner of adjusting the size? I don't know how you do it, but I'm sure there are people who will have that comment.
Well, I would like to produce, well, the site size allows us to go even more than what we've asked for. But my criteria for this house is I'd like to have a 4-bedroom house. Typically, people use 4-bedroom houses for a family of 4 or 5 and an office. I mean, that's what the demographic is. And a 4-bedroom, 3,200 foot house is fairly reasonable. I mean, making it smaller means chopping out a bedroom, and I don't think that that's what the market is asking us to do today.
Okay. All right. Rather than belabor the point, I understand what your need is. Okay. So that said, I think you guys have offered up enough for us to consider before we go to public comment. So, Mr. Boyle, do you have any letters that have to be read regarding this project?
I do. Thank you, Chair Chase. I do have one letter that came in later this afternoon from Joe Harrington at 422 Redwood Avenue. He writes, "Dear Planning Commission, I understand there will be a second hearing this evening regarding the proposed project located at 317 Redwood Avenue. After my own due diligence and review of all shared reports and disclosures, I am in total support of this build. I feel confident that this project will not only bring great value to our community, but is also a necessary improvement to the existing dilapidated and obsolete dwelling. The proposed property is of a size and caliber that is a welcome addition to our neighborhood. I look forward to seeing this beautiful home come to life. Joe Harrington, 422 Redwood Avenue." And that is the only comment, that is the only correspondence that I have post noon today, when we sent you all what we had received for both of these prelims at noon. And then that's all I have post noon.
Okay. All right. Well, that said, then we will continue with this and make sure that people understand the public comment section of this is open now. You will have 3 minutes to make a comment. I will time that for you. You can write an email to publiccomment@tcmmail.org if you so wish, or you can use the Q&A button on your screen to send in a question that Tracy can moderate for us. So that said, Tracy, do you show any hands up for this project?
It's quite a few people on here. I'm just giving them a minute. I don't see any hands at the moment. We waited just long enough. There's the one hand up. I see it's Deborah Sartell. Deborah, you just want to unmute yourself so you can be heard.
Hi. Are you
Hi.
there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have not had too many problems with the plans of the house, and I do think the house is pretty nice looking. Our whole problem from the start, and I feel like now it's turned into a Dan has planned from the beginning to remove the redwood, and the redwood is the one thing that gives us the preventing staring at this gigantic house. And it also has given us joy for 20 years, 20 some years that we have lived here. And considering this is a spec house and not one that Dan will be living in, he's just coming into our community, building a house, leaving our community while we still remain here, we still continue to try and find a way to keep the redwood. And I am wondering, has the town considered hiring an independent arborist? Because I've heard that I know the biggest problem everyone continues to talk about is that there are two trunks that have separated, that you can remove the weakest trunk and then the redwood is strong and can remain. So that's just one thing I've heard. I think that maybe another arborist instead of the one that continues to support Dan's idea of removing the redwood might help us to solve some of this. That's what I have to say. I don't know if my husband has any more to add, but we hate to see the redwood go.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah.
Thank you.
All right, I see Liz Miller has a hand up.
Yes, thank you. Liz, I've allowed you to talk. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay.
There you
Hi,
go.
hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Something just came to my mind. I had a nice visit with Dan the other day, and we talked about the windows and shared some good information. I did have a question about the opaqueness of the windows. When we first talked about it, I was imagining that that the glass itself would be opaque. And you said you would be using a film on it. Is this a sort of a film that could be scraped off with a fingernail or a razor blade? Kids are wont to do this sort of thing, even if the parents aren't.
Liz, I offered up the
Tell you
film.
what, well, Liz, we will get any other questions you have, and then we will let the applicant respond to that after your commentary or at the end of public comment.
Okay.
How's that? Do you have anything else you would like to ask?
No, not at this point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We will get Mr. Miller or whomever, Mr. Morgan, to comment on that shortly. And it may be very shortly if we have no other hands up. Oh, there's one from Don Wahlberg.
Don, I allowed you to talk. If you want to unmute yourself, go right ahead.
Yes, this process we're going through is really awful. I think you should pass this project without any restrictions, the way it is right now. I've attended hundreds of meetings like this over the past 40 years as a paid professional. I've got 45 projects in the Presidio. I've done shopping centers and government projects and ultra high-end houses right now. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of bureaucratic staff, and I've read thousands of pages of rules and restrictions. And this is the way it works. The owner, Mr. Morgan, is the only one who owns this property. He's the only one who's putting money into this project. He's improving a small corner of our town. He owns the property rights from property boundary to property boundary, all the way up into the sky according to British common rules, which is what our laws are based upon. So this is the way that it works. We neighbors now come here and we want to get something from this Mr. Morgan. Okay, we want to get this restriction and we want to get that restriction. All right. And we want you, the town staff, to give it to us based upon rules that the planning staff has made up. And I mean made up. I've seen it for years and years and years. You see, it's in the planning staff's best interest to make these rules, because the more rules there are, the bigger their program is, the more secure their job is. It doesn't do any good, okay? Right now, I have seen an incredible increase in the number of rules over the last 10 years, and especially since the fires are down in San Diego, there's just been an explosion. The fire departments have become unreasonable with very little scientific knowledge. So what you're going to do is you're going to take these property rights from an owner and you're going to give it to the neighbor by the use of force. If I was to do that, taking it from my neighbors by force, you'd throw me in jail. But is it okay for just a few people in this town to make a rule that makes it okay now? I don't think so. Almost all these rules and restrictions violate rule number 7. Thou shalt not steal. Please stop stealing property rights and pass this project.
Thank you, Don. The time is up.
I don't see any additional hands. Peter, I don't see.
Looks like Deborah stuck her hand up again.
You want to allow that?
I did.
I just wanted to add that this is not a whim that I, as a neighbor, want to keep the redwood. I always thought it was a law that the redwoods could not be removed. So we always thought the redwood will always be there. I just want to make that point out. I'm not being whimsical here and demanding something that I did not think was within our rights to maintain redwoods. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. Deborah got her words in there. So
Sorry about that, Peter.
that's all right. We'll live. Anyone else? Any letters or cards and comments coming in the door?
Nothing in the email. I don't see any Q&A either.
Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll end the public comment section of this item tonight, and we will bring it back to the commission to discuss. So there's been a fair amount of letters and cards coming in from various people. I trust that everybody's read all of them. So,
Mr. Chair, would you like me to address Liz's question?
yes, please. You may.
Thank you. I'm not sure where the mutton bars are going to land on the windows. What I've done in the past and what I do in my own house is I apply a window film. And Liz and I agreed that we would stand there and see what works best for both of us. And I just want to add that the film works two ways. We don't want to look, the people in the house at 317 Redwood don't want to look down. She doesn't want to look up. And we're going to do, I want to work with my neighbors to make sure that everybody's satisfied. So we've agreed to a range, and there's a letter in your packet, of 60 to 65 inches. And we agreed that we would just stand there when the floors are framed and figure it out and do it. I'm not sure how you put that in a condition, but we're not asked to be conditioned right now. With respect to the redwood, I do want to comment that my arborist has said, and I think redwood, the science is redwoods are evasive. This tree is huge, and it's whatever we build there, it's going to compromise the foundation. I love redwoods, I love trees, but at a certain point in their maturity, they destroy things around them and even the neighbors' properties. So I don't think it's reasonable to assume that it can stay and maintain any integrity for the current building or a proposed building. So that's, let me add one more thing to the film. I offered, and I'm happy to, we've offered a deed restriction on the property at 317 Redwood, whereby the neighbors, the subsequent owners can't make the windows operable or remove the film when that's a violation of the deed restriction. So I've tried very hard to accommodate my neighbors, and I will continue to do so.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, so here we are. We've got a lot of information. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Rizzo. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I think we'll probably end up doing a couple of rounds here of commissioners to see where we stand, but I don't know that yet. Let's see where you are.
Yeah, I wanted to ask where Deborah lived. She was, I don't know if she ever said her address, for her view and for her impacts on the tree. And
She is at 10 Hill Path. This is Tracy.
Okay.
Deborah lives at 10 Hill Pass, which is above this property, and it's to the southeast up the hill of this property.
Okay, so the one behind the Stefanos.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to start off. I mean, I said last meeting I really like the design and the architectural articulation of the forms and elements. I thought Tyler did a really good job in designing the house. I'm a little concerned about the film on the glass being an issue for Miss Miller at a later date. Even if it is a deed restriction, it could become problematic at a later date, just as a thought, but I can support it if Miss Miller is okay with it. I'd still like to see the house set back just a tiny bit. Just because of the other two properties that are neighboring it they're really set back kind of far. This is going to kind of poke out a little bit. And after walking the property, walking up the path, walking up and down the street, looking at the landscaping, I think the new landscaping plan is going to actually benefit the neighbors as far as their privacy and light, because I think that the landscape architect really did a good job of focusing in on the specific needs of each neighbor. If you kind of take a look at the plan and what's being planted there, I think there's some live oaks there that are going to be very, very beautiful, and allow a lot more light into a lot of these houses. And those acacia trees are a fire disaster. We need to get rid of those. But as I walked around the property, I really think that but with the new landscaping, it's gonna highlight some more privacy and allow more light into some of the backyards. Now that the canopy's cut on the redwood, you could really, no matter where you walk around that property, you could see right into the back of the house. So I think by putting that landscaping in along the perimeter of the property and closer to the neighboring properties, you're going to eliminate that view into the back of the new house. And then I'd like to see how the applicant's going to deal with 325 Redwood's concern about her view and some of her privacy impacts. But other than that, I think it's an attractive house, and I thought they did a pretty good job of setting it back on all four sides to make it feel a little less like a two-story house. So that's what I have.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jim. Thoughtful. To you, Dr. Bundy, what do you have to contribute to this preliminary study?
Well, I'd like to say, along with Jim, that I also really like the design of the house, the way the second story is set back. I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. We've had a lot of issues in regard to redwoods. I remember the discussion on the property on Chapman, where I was really trying to save this redwood, which had been topped, so it was not, a natural redwood. But realized that it was going to be very difficult for the property owner to develop a appropriate house on that property with that redwood in place, and we ultimately allowed that to go. I think that's a similar situation with what we're looking at here at 317. The fact that it's codominant would require cabling, and this is a relatively compact neighborhood, and at some point, a lot of these redwoods that are even taller than this one, taller and older than this one, are going to be problems for a lot of the people in the neighborhood. And the landscaping plan, as described with the oaks, I think will be very nice. We talked about setbacks being variable on the Christmas Tree Hill, and if you're right on the road and the property just goes up straight behind you, there's no way that you can have a setback. There's no way you can have a backyard. You end up, with usually a garage right on the street and access to creative stepped back building going up the hill. In this situation, at least there is a level spot that is there. I feel like, Jim, that there isn't enough of a setback from the front when you look at the two adjoining properties and other properties along that street. And I like the house design. I would like to see it stepped back. I would like to see the mulberry tree be able to be saved. But even if the design setting it back wouldn't allow for appropriate driveway and parking and such, replacement with another tree would be acceptable. But I would like to see it set back significantly, excavating into the hillside with retaining wall. But I may have to let my fellow commissioners convince me otherwise. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. Margaret Vandell.
First, I just want to address one of the comments and remind everybody who's here and listening that the planning commission was asked for our input. We're not taking or doing anything to anybody. We were asked for our input to help the builder or the project creator, and that's what we're doing today. I do want to say something about the redwood, being the owner of 2 redwood trees. Redwoods are very beautiful trees, but they're very expensive. They are very invasive, and they basically ruin every other thing you want to plant around them. Plus, looking at this redwood tree, I don't think you can cut one of the trunks out because they're pretty much divided equally. It's not like one is dominant over the other. Even though I love redwood trees, I think that this redwood tree probably should go. And the landscaping that's being proposed is beautiful with the live oaks. I think that's wonderful. The real problem that, one other thing, I don't understand why the problem with this film is so tremendous. Why don't people use window shades? Just saying. Look, I have a big window shade right here. Nobody wants to look in or out of a bathroom or any other room of someone else's house. Put a shade up or a curtain. To me, that's the easiest solution. The thing that I do have a problem with is the setback. And that's why I was asking about how big that backyard is. It's not much of a backyard, I agree. But there's so many other spaces in that house. I don't think it needs a big backyard, or take down the pergola and make that whole thing the backyard. But I think there's room to move it back. And I think this house has one of everything inside of it. And I think that for this space in that neighborhood that's there, and for the way it looks from the front where the public walks back and forth, it needs to be set back more. I will say that I think it's, even though it probably wasn't tremendous, the slant on the front roofs, the pitch of the front roofs from the front on that north elevation picture, I think it's a tremendous improvement, just that little bit. Let's see. That's all I have.
Well, thank you, Margaret. Okay, then finally I go to you, Phyllis.
Well, as the other commission members have mentioned, I too would like to see it set back further. I do understand what the problem is. And as I say, my personal preference would be to set it back further, but that's something that the applicant is going to have to work with, and the size of the backyard. As far as the redwood tree goes, and it's interesting, Dan Morgan mentioned that there's one behind it. He found out when the drone went up, or not necessarily on the same property. The person who would like to keep the redwood tree, I don't think it can be kept. And if she wants a redwood tree, she could plant one in her own yard, which would give her the same privacy because they grow awfully fast. I do commend the applicant for his patience. He has dealt with several issues and has really gone out of his way to work with the neighbors. And I think everybody should appreciate that and acknowledge it. I am no expert and don't plan to be on film versus totally frosted windows, etc. Yeah, I've got 2 different degrees in architecture, and this was not something that was a big important subject matter. But I do know that my neighbors down the street have very nice shades which open from the bottom rather than the top. And I would think the home that Dan Morgan is building, or Liz Miller, the neighbor who's concerned, that those type of shades can be used. As I say, they are quite attractive. If I had windows that were facing the street or directly on a neighbor and I was going to put in shades, that's the way I would go. I don't know how having a deed restriction will affect the original sale of the property or future owners of the property. And I guess Mr. Morgan, who does a lot of building these things on spec, is far more knowledgeable than any of us are. But in general, those would be my comments on this. I think the changes that have been made have been a very good improvement. As I mentioned last time, this is not exactly the style of house that I would choose, but it's one that works with the neighborhood and the homes around it. As I say, my only problem would be is the setback. I understand why it is done as it is done, and I would like if the architect and Mr. Morgan could find a way to have a larger setback in the front. I don't know if it's possible, but that would not keep me from not approving this at the time it comes up for the commission's approval. And that's it, Peter.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. For my part, I find that the architecture is very attractive for this area, and I think it fits in very well. I'm going to say that the setback is my sole difficulty with the project, and I would move it back probably 3 to 4 feet and actually build a higher retaining wall at the back that would be in conjunction with the existing wood retaining wall. When it comes to the obscure glass, it's not difficult just to put the film on as you've described and leave it there in perpetuity. You can't etch glass and have it last as well as the film does, because glass will spot, sandblasted glass will spot and have various problems with it. So I hope you can work that out. And I think that the agreement to frost that glass with film is a good one. It'll last. But the redwood tree, I think, has to go to keep this a viable project. To the point made earlier, nothing grows around a redwood tree. It's its own world, and it just isn't going to work at the backside of this house. So I'm in support of that, and I'm in support of the whole project with the exception of the setback. So I think that's where it stands. We have a consensus among all commissioners that there is a setback issue from what I'm hearing, and that the redwood tree is something that needs to be removed in order to build this project. Adam, would you have anything else you'd want to add to this?
No, I think the commission has provided some really helpful feedback and direction for this project. So thank you.
Okay.
Bill, anything else on here?
No, I think good feedback. I mean, Chair Chase mentioned 3 to 4 feet. Is that the general feeling of the rest of the commission, that that's a reasonable number? So the applicant, not saying the applicant has to do that, but so the applicant has something to shoot for.
Bob.
Yeah, I would probably want to move it back further in the range of 10 feet or more. And that would require excavation and a big old retaining wall in back. I do want to commend Dan for his honesty of, coming forward to build a spec house as opposed to trying to say he's going to build his forever dream home. I can't remember if Peter, you gave me the advice when I came on, or maybe my neighbor Dave Johnson, that assume every house is a spec house. So thanks, Dan.
Welcome. Thank you. Every house is a spec house someday.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So I hope you guys feel like you've heard enough tonight to prepare your application as you see fit.
We have. Thank you very much for your time, your comments, your consideration. The comments are all well taken, and we'll be back to you and address them as best we can. Look forward to coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
what we'll do now is that we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll be back here at just about 9:05. So with that said, we'll resume the meeting here to our last and final business item. This is 24 Mohawk Avenue, a preliminary review of a proposal for construction of a new 2-story single-family home and the demolition of the existing residence at 24 Mohawk Avenue. So again, Mr. Boyle, your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman Chase. And I will share my screen once again. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. So this is a preliminary review for a new home at 24 Mohawk Avenue, the complete removal of the existing home and construction of a new 2-story home to replace the approximately 900 square foot single level home that exists today. Project is located at where Mohawk takes a sharp turn, very close to the intersection of Mohawk and Lakeside, which is right over here. Where's my cursor? Right over there. So 24 Mohawk, a large lot, pie-shaped lot, backing onto the commercial building here and backing close to this canal, which eventually goes to Lagoon 1. Just to give a brief overview of the site plan, the proposal is a 2-story single-family home, a carport right adjacent to the home, and then access here for vehicles along the left side or south side of the lot to a 3-car garage, which is located here. The applicant will talk in detail on their choice of this site plan, I'm sure. Just to give you a little bit more detail, just to zero in on the detached garage, as you can see, it's in the rear setback, and that is allowed per our code, per section 1808220. You can have an accessory structure or a portion of an accessory structure that is 10 feet, sorry, it should be 10 feet instead of inches, 10 feet in height or less, as long as that portion of the structure does not take up more than 12% of the rear yard. So in this case, just rough numbers, the rear yard, the rear setback area is roughly 2,500 square feet. The portion that's hanging into the rear yard is 182 square feet, and that's about 7.3% of that area. So they're well under the 12%. So that's how they're allowed to have this accessory structure creep into and part of the backyard. So I just wanted to clear that up if there are any questions on that. Zooming out, this is the front elevation. A little bit tough to see the perspective because on the right you have this 2-story single family home, of course, front door. And on the left, you have that detached garage, which is set quite a bit back, of course, as you just saw on the site plan. And the carport here right on the side. The side or east elevation. Again, this is the elevation with the carport here is again to orient you. Again, showing the side elevation, some clear story windows, not a lot of windows on the lower level. And various roof shapes to give the modern look that they're after. As you see, and you've seen in the report, they are elevating their structure significantly to meet the FEMA floodplain requirements. And the applicant will talk a little bit more detail with that with their architect. The opposite elevation, the west elevation, again, a little bit more windows, hardy plank siding up on the upper level. Majority of the other siding is going to be stucco, and they're proposing a standing seam metal roof. The real elevation, leading into the backyard, of course, the garage is over off to the right. Got an upper level deck, as well as a lower deck and a lower covered patio leading to the backyard, the stucco siding and the hardy board siding as well. I do want to, I jumped over a little bit too quickly. There is something that's, I think, unique in this particular project, and some neighbors have made comments to, is the second level balcony on the front elevations. You just want to point that out as well. In terms of just briefly going over the floor plan, front porch, main, great room, kitchen, dining, living area, and then a guest bedroom and bath, and then a study in the front. Stairways leading up, stairway leading here, leading down. Because of the elevating of the structure for the floodplain, you've got some stairs going down to a small mud room, which takes you to that carport. And then you've got a rear covered porch and then a rear deck. Going up to the second level, have the majority of the bedrooms, the master suite with a master closet and bath, all facing to the back of the building. Upper level balcony again at the back, and then the two front bedrooms facing the street. Second story balcony here again. Bathroom in the middle, and laundry room and stair. Just to give you a quick overview of numbers, very large lot, almost 11,500 square feet. Again, apples and oranges really, of course, in terms of similar to the last project, in terms of very small house being removed, large house being added, going from a floor ratio of 15 to 37. Setbacks, not a, I'm just trying to point out some main things, really not a huge difference in the setbacks. Big difference in height, of course, 13 feet to 30 feet, going from one uncovered parking space. I'm sorry, that should be covered as well because they've got a garage. And three covered parking spaces is proposed. The project meets all the numbers for R1, but they are not requesting any variances at this point. So that's just that. But obviously, there's many aspects of the design review findings that need to be made that are above and beyond just the numbers. The colors and materials board. Just give you an idea of where what materials they're going to be using for the exterior is shown here. And then just an overview of the neighborhood outreach, which they'll go into much more. This is the information they provided to me at their application, and they have expanded since that time. But basically, they reached out to at least 14 of their neighbors. They included a letter with a project description, invitation for a neighborhood meeting. Applicant provided a summary of that outreach, which is in attachment 2 of the staff report. And the town received emails from approximately 15 different neighbors. We got more than 15 emails, but I think there are about 15, maybe 17. A couple more came in late today, making comments on this project. So that concludes my brief report for this preliminary review, and I have some comments from the neighbors that have come in late that I'd like to read, and then one comment from a neighbor that came in a while back. He specifically said he'd like his comment to be read into the record, so I'll go by the guidance of the chair for that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So we'll talk to the commissioners here now and see if they have any questions for you. Dr. Bundy, do you have any questions for Mr. Boyle?
I did have a question, but maybe the applicant can answer it in regard to the detached garage. It looked like there was a back large opening on that, and I just was trying to figure out what the purpose of that was.
Phil, should we answer now?
No, don't answer now. We'll get to you shortly. Yeah, thank you. Phil, do you have that imagery?
I don't think I have that. I don't believe I have that image as a slide, but I can. Yeah.
And before we get too far, Phil,
the applicant may have that.
Sorry, Chairman Chase, if you don't mind, Phil, I just thought it might be helpful since we had a large number of public comments, if you could just explain to the commission and the members of the public here how those comments were communicated to the commission. Because some came in prior to the packet, and so they're obviously in the staff report, but others have come in since then. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware how that their comments have been included in the packet or, otherwise communicated to the commission since the packet went out on Friday.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Adam. So the comments were a variety of different deadlines. So comments that were received up till Friday, the 10th at 5 p.m. were in the packet. Any comment that came in after 5 p.m. on Friday and by noon on Monday, those were sent to the commission and the applicants and on the website on noon on Monday. And then the last noon deadline was today at noon. We received some more comments, and those were given to the applicants and posted on the website. And then lastly, anything that came in afternoon, I will read to you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds to me like, Dr. Bundy, that your question is really one for the applicant, which we'll get to. We'll let the applicant answer all of these shortly. Margaret, do you have any questions? Or Bob, do you have any other questions? Should I ask?
No other questions.
Okay. Margaret, do you have any questions for the applicant? I mean, for the staff at this point?
I'm gonna listen to everything first, and then I'll have questions.
Okay, very good. Mr. Rizzo, do you have any staff questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the canal in the back. When looking at our FAR code, it deals with the North American vertical datum when we're talking about when the lagoons are behind the homes in this neighborhood. Does any of that apply to this particular site that the canal is right there? Because, and the reason I say that is because most of this property, or not say most, but maybe 25% of it is under 6.2.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. Sorry, Phil, we've recognized there's actually entire lots of land that aren't even around waterways, for example, that are below the 6.2 NAVD, which would, by strict reading of the definition, would mean that there's no available area to be built on. So by interpretation, we've really looked at that as that NAVD really relates to those areas of a lot that are impacted by water in the actual waterway, not the land itself that may be out of the waterway. So does that clarify it for you? So that would be the case here, since none of the actual property itself is within that waterway. It would not be affected by that strict definition or reading of the code in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the diagram looks like in our code. I was just curious because it has 6.2 feet and it hasn't come up in any of my reviews before. So that was my only question for Phil.
I think it's come up in one of the ones recently on I want to say on Birch, where this came to our attention as well. And we've written a internal policy memo on that, which we are happy to share with the commission.
Great. Okay, Phyllis, do you have any questions for the staff?
No, I'll reserve my questions and comments until after we have all the presentations.
So now we can go let the applicant answer that question about the garage, if you would, please. Is there an opening at the back of the garage, or what is that?
Hi. Yes, Spencer here with my wife, Britt. Just to specifically answer that question, that is intended to be another roll-up door. There's the way the garage is placed now, there's, maybe 20 feet of yard behind it. And we thought if there was a need to have a little lawnmower or a piece of equipment that had to get back there, it would be able to pass through the garage. So it's kind of just a way to access that behind the garage area of the yard.
Okay. All right. So now that we've heard from staff, it is time for you, the applicant, to make your presentation, which I presume you will.
Great, thank you. Excuse me, I'm going to start off and just kind of introduce us so people can get familiar. And then I'll hand it over to Spencer, my husband, who will talk a little bit about our journey over the past year and how we got to where we are today. We're a family of four. We have two young children, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. We moved to Madera Gardens in the fall of 2019. We rented a house on Seminole Avenue. And throughout the year and a half that we lived there, we just really fell in love with the neighborhood. As you know, I know a lot of the people that are going to comment here are going to talk about how great the neighborhood is. It is a place where our son enjoyed many of the activities, soccer and capoeira and dance classes, and we've made a lot of good connections with other neighborhoods, with other neighbors in the Madera Gardens. And we just thought, wow, this is a great place to raise our family. Fast forward in June of 2020, 24 Mohawk came on the market. We had always planned to buy. And so we went and looked at the property, and the large size backyard that Phil kind of showed really spoke to us. I mean, we're a very outdoors family, and we would like to have a large outdoor space for our children to grow up in. And we also just like the proximity to the town park, and there's an access gate. So there's a lot of attractive things about the property to us. And so I kind of just want to conclude with, this is a long-term investment for us. We want to continue to build the relationships that we've already built upon in the neighborhood. I know over the past, 3 or 4 days, we've gotten a lot of feedback and comments, which we're looking forward to hearing today. And I really appreciate Phil letting us have this study session so we can hear that out. We're here to take notes, and, we want to come out of this with a, concrete, productive discussion, and, go back and see what we can do with the design to help some of the concerns that the neighbors are raising. By no means do we just want to, push this through and create adversarial relationship. That's not the kind of people we are, or the family that we are. So we're open, and we're looking forward to this discussion. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Spencer, my husband, to talk a little bit about how we got where we are today.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'd like to reiterate what my wife just said about loving the neighborhood and really enjoying our time here. When we bought the house, we kind of had a particular idea of how it's a small house. It's original to the development around 1951. It's never really been updated or expanded. So when we bought it, we knew we were going to have to work on it. It wasn't going to work for us. Family of 4, 2 small kids, and both working, in the middle of the lockdown. So we went into it eyes wide open, knowing we had to do some work. It was kind of a short sale period. So we made the decision to buy it. We bought it, and, started looking into it. My dad here is our architect. He's an architect and my dad. So we, have, hopefully enough education here to, do a good project. The first thought was to, try and do a quick remodel and fix it up and move in, and then develop a, larger plan to get the house where we needed it. You know, as we started talking to staff, which has been a really great experience, they've been great to work with, various members, Tracy and Phil and Martha, and understanding all the ordinances that apply to, you know, a house in the floodplain. You know, our different ideas just didn't seem to stick. You know, we sketched up ideas to add rooms. We sketched up ideas to add just a story on top, and they all kind of got met with that wouldn't be feasible. They were going to trigger a foundation retrofit. It's going to trigger a lift. And so we kind of analyzed that, and you know, the reality is that our house and, you know, most of those houses in this portion of Madera Gardens are slabs on grade. They, you know, I have experience lifting, you know, our own house, you know, years ago in the family. It just, we couldn't make it make sense. You know, the slab would stay on the ground. We can't, you know, economically find a way to lift the house that's there. You know, we kind of kicked around a couple ideas for a few months and then just didn't get where we needed to go, and kind of paused and you know, decided we had to, the only path forward for us to make it work for us was to start over. So, you know, it wasn't like a quick decision. We hemmed and hawed on it, a lot of angst, and, you know, so then we took the time to try and figure out what was going to work best. So we, you know, thought about it, and the expense of the endeavor, and, you know, the time we're going to be here, and, you know, kind of came up with a dream house. So it's bigger than the house that's there. It's got, you know, room for us to grow. You know, we designed it while during a shelter-in-place pandemic, so we were both working from home at the time. It has space to work. It has a space for each child. So that's kind of our programming that we've built into it. You know, one of the major components of the house that we love is the size of the yard. So we felt like we wanted to take advantage of that. So we endeavored to want to keep the backyard, you know, usable. And then, you know, as we laid it out, we it became awkward placing the structures. It has parking challenges. You know, to meet the parking ordinances, and parking in the front, it was going to take up most of the front yard with the triangle shaped lot. We kind of, in sizing and massing and placing the buildings, you know, my dad, our architect, you know, thought maybe with this triangle shape, we could take the garage component and move it to the back where it would just not interfere with the massing and the size of the footprint of the building. And we kind of took that and decided that really kind of spoke to us. And so that's the, you know, it's one of the kind of major components of the design is the garage in the back. And then also, you know, obviously it's a 2-story building. And so, you know, that's, you know, also a major component of the design. Why is it a 2-story? Well, you know, basically it's a smaller footprint. A 2-story house has about half the footprint of an equally sized 1-story house. That, you know, is obvious, but it's practical in this instance as we're being held to you know, about a 5-foot tall foundation. So, you know, just, it's not appealing to us to have the high raised foundation. You know, it's kind of obtrusive, you know, especially if the house is against the property lines, looking down on neighbors. So you know, it's just a lot of unoccupied space that, you know, we didn't want to have to build and live on top of. So it was really an intentional point to minimize the amount of floodplain foundation. The garage, it's a 3-car garage. You know, we're a big active family. We got camping stuff, ski stuff, bicycles, gardening stuff, some tools, exercise equipment. You know, we both canceled our gym memberships during the pandemic. We intend to, you know, live a lot out of that garage and use a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's just the existing house had some encroachment or setback problems that we're correcting. You know, it had a front yard setback that we're eliminating. You know, parking was, a real consideration. There's not enough, the front of the lot is so narrow that we can't park in front of the house. So, when we go there now, we park, across the street or down the street or double park in the driveway and sometimes overhang the sidewalk. So we just felt like there was too much room in the back of the lot and not enough in the front. So getting the garage component to the back really kind of cleared a lot of, kind of inherent design problems for us. Looking at some of these other houses that have been raised to the FEMA floodplain height, the garage kind of always seems like a little bit of a challenge, matching roof lines or, if a second story does go on them, do they go on top of the garage or top of the raised first floor or adjacent? And they kind of just create a stepping concern that, everyone works with. But this was one way of doing it, is just separating the garage and moving it to the back of the lot. Additionally, another consideration we had was the far corner of this lot has the sanitary sewer pump station in it. It's not the most desirable view in the property, so we thought the garage would be a natural screen for it. It's not too big of a eyesore, but from time to time it runs and you can smell it. So it was just a nice way to kind of hide that from our own view. Just talking about the house itself, finishes, we tried to the best that we can afford, come up with a high-end finishes, durable. Yes, it's a more modern look. It's got some low pitch shed roofs that aren't totally typical to the neighborhood. There's a few examples on our on Seminole, but we think it's tasteful. We think it's handsome, so we kind of went with that look. Maybe now that I'm getting into the overall design, I'll pass it off to my dad, who's our architect, and he'll definitely be able to give a lot more detail.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Alan Sales. I'm the architect for this project. Most of the focus tonight, I think, will be on height, setback, and story. But before we go there, I want to talk about uniqueness features of the site that we use to influence our design. Spencer did a good job of explaining many of them, so I apologize if I repeat anything. Due to the pie shape of the lot, we are extremely narrow in the front, less than 50 feet. The neighbor to the right's driveway actually crosses several feet onto our property. And we have a difficulty of, if we put a garage in front, a two-car garage, there's really not much room for anything else with the setback. And to have a decent front that would really look and fit with the neighborhood, remoting the garage or moving the garage to the back seemed to make the most sense. So we provided a narrow driveway to the left side, and that had several advantages. The first advantage is that it created a fairly large side setback for that side, which I thought was beneficial. The second one is, as Spencer pointed out, it solved a lot of parking issues, because now because the driveway goes along the side of the house to a detached garage in the rear, which is typical of a lot of traditional homes that I've worked on, you end up with a long driveway that's good for parking. It's also good for other things as well, like kids riding bikes and stuff, and not having to be on the street. It also has an effect of reducing the mass of the house because it's not attached to it. It's kind of tucked behind it. So we end up, I think, with a quality front yard and landscape, and we get rid of the two-car apron in the front. I took a look at the neighborhood, and it's a it's very typical of the neighborhood I live in Lafayette on the other side of the bay. This was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. I purchased a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home in Lafayette several years ago. And these were very typical of the post-war GI Bill homes that had 1 or 1.5 or 2 bathrooms, 2 or 3 bedrooms, all with 1 story. Now, the issue here is that, we have the FEMA floodplain to deal with. Originally, we were hoping to add on to the back of the house, possibly lift the addition out of the floodplain, but learned that that's not a possibility under your ordinances or FEMA. So, and the house itself just can't be lifted. It's a slab on grade, and it's a very old, tired home. And without lifting the home and doing a very minimal addition, you still face the issue of what happens. We're not Louisiana, but FEMA through Army Corps of Engineers is very accurate. I mean, if they say that you need a design for a particular floodplain, they're usually accurate within an inch or two. It may not happen in my lifetime, I'm old, but it will happen, perhaps in my kids or my grandkids' lifetime. So it's a necessary thing. And for that reason, we tend to look a little bit larger, quite a bit larger than the neighbors on either side of us, because the neighbors on either side of us are non-conforming. If they were conforming, they'd start 5 feet higher. Getting back to what I think the issues are tonight, and I think it's all about stories. 2 stories is allowed in this zone. 2 stories preserves open space. 2 stories reduces the footprint. 2 stories increases the pervious ground. It takes advantage of the efficiency of a home. We end up with less surface area from a home that is 2-story. We looked around the neighborhood, and today I drove around and I counted 24 in the flat area immediately surrounding. I counted 24 2-story homes. I think that, there's things that we can always do to do better. I think we can do better landscape screening. I think we can do privacy screening. I think we can use higher windows on the left and right side. And we did spend almost a year with staff, and all of these came up, and we thought we addressed most of them, but there's always room to improve. So you're going to hear from the neighbors tonight, and who will say, well, we simply do not want 2-story, but it has its significant advantages. Roof solar is above the vegetation, and again, the footprint is significantly less, and it's less concentration of runoff, more area to do bioswaling and water runoff retention. So it is something that I think that is the modern way of doing homes. Most of my clients want a 1-story home. I try to educate them into the benefits of 2, and for the reasons I've mentioned.
Mr. Sales, could I ask you to abbreviate your remarks so that we can get on? Thank you.
All right. Well, then let me just close here quickly. We understand this is a study session and no decisions will be made, but we are looking for direction, and we are hopeful that we can get to something that you're able to approve, and We will work with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Commissioners, I will poll you to see if you have any questions for the applicant at this point. Phyllis.
No, I'll wait until we hear from everybody.
Okay, thank you. Margaret,
No.
no questions. And Mr. Rizzo?
I'm curious, what's the number above grade that we're shooting for to be above the FEMA floodplain? Is it-
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay, based on our discussions with staff and the guidelines, it's 11 feet to the finished floor. So 11 feet NAVD above, just North American vertical datum.
And where's the grade now?
The
Is it-
current, like at the threshold of the slab on grade of the house is about right at 6.5.
So you're talking about a 4.5 foot elevation?
Around 5 to 11 feet. So 4.5 to 5, yeah. The lot's mostly flat, but fluctuates, a few inches across.
Okay, and I'm just curious, did you guys explore any other roof lines? How did you come about the shed roof composite?
Yeah, I mean, we like that modern look, that modern style. We're not opposed to looking at other roof lines if that is a very undesirable look for in the neighborhood. So to answer, we mainly looked at the modern style.
There was also a comment about the front balcony. I'm just curious how desirable the front back. I mean, I know the back's looking at Mount Tam. I don't know if you've got a view out of the front. Is that something that would be a concession? It seemed like a few people had comments about that.
It's certainly like everything, we want to participate and give and hear everyone's comments. And, obviously that's not a critical component of the building. We have the covered porch, which we like, and that obviously has a roof line. Was a quick draw and a cool idea that I propose to have up there. It's not a critical component, so it's definitely up for discussion.
Okay, that's all I have. Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. Bundy?
No questions at this time.
Okay. I don't have any questions for you guys at this time. So I think what we'll do then is we'll move it over to public comment. We're going to hit 10 o'clock, I suspect, on this meeting. So we'll take a vote at 10 to continue to 10:30. So we're at 1/4 of now. So that's where we stand with time. With this, we will open this up to public comment. And Tracy, I'll let you handle the hands up.
Sure. There's a hand up from Miss Cleona O'Donnell. I've allowed you to talk. If you wouldn't mind, please unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Cleona O'Donnell and we live at 22 Mohawk Avenue, which is to the left of the property, 24. I wrote an email and talked about my concerns, but something I'd like to bring up today is you mentioned that the garage would be 10 feet, that was the allowed, but the plans that we were shown, the garage goes up to 13 feet. So I'm wondering if that has been changed or if I'm misreading it. But also we have big concerns about the garage in the backyard. When you look at the side view with the garage and the home, we have a very slight view through there, which blocks our view of Mount Tam and the trees and what we've had for 26 years. So that's very upsetting for us to lose that. And also when you say that you wanted to hide the pump station, well, hiding the pump station with a 3-car garage is actually hiding our view of, what we like to look at and nature that's in our backyard, but suddenly it's going to be a building right there. So that's a little upsetting. And also when you're talking about like a, 2 stories, a 2-story house, there's that. Well, the 2-story house is going to block our light considerably. It's going to severely impact number 26 to the right. And it's also going to impede our privacy. All the houses around are going to be affected greatly by the lack of privacy with a 2-story home of that size. And we understand that things need to change and that it's not a suitable house for your family. But we also have a problem, just with the pure size of it. We've raised 4 children in our house, and it's plenty of room for having an office space and having plenty of space for 4 children. So I'm just not sure that in our neighborhood that a house that size really fits. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, we have Sean Westerhoff. I'm going to allow you to talk, then go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for this time and opportunity. I live at 26 Mohawk and have for 26 years. The main points I wanted to address were about shade and the darkness that's going to come from this structure. Significant from the shade study that we've seen, and also just what we perceive to be the proximity of the structure, the shear wall of the structure, sort of reminiscent of a rock face at our property edge, really is oppressive. There was a mention of solar on the rooftops, and our solar study relied on having the roof that will be shaded by this structure be the main power generating plane for our solar property. So just wanted to start with that. And the second and the most important is the privacy issue. These 2 rear balconies are both above the fence line between the 2 properties. So there's a plan for an outdoor kitchen. Clearly, as we do, outdoor living is very important, but that outdoor living is going to be above the fence line and looking into our backyard. Not to mention the height of the higher of the 2 balconies for the master bedroom will see clear past our lot and into the next one to the left. To the right if you're looking from the street. I also just had a quick comment on the detached structure. I was questioning why we even have a setback if you can just abuse it. And I think that as the previous property on Redwood demonstrated, these kinds of setback exclusions really should be reserved for where they're needed, which is in the kinds of lots that we were talking about earlier tonight. So in the interest of time, I'll close. I have a lot more things to say, but I'll turn it back to the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have Stacy Prince. Go ahead and unmute when you're ready.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stacy Prince, and I live at 26 Mohawk with Sean, who just spoke. We appreciate your thoughtful consideration and time. And while we did submit a letter, we feel like it's important to have our voices heard because this is a very important issue to us. I could make like an emotional plea and an impassioned commentary about being a 26-year resident, about the welcoming and charming neighborhood that we live in, and how that will negatively impact, their build will negatively impact our community. But I'll try to stay objective, even though it's really challenging for me to do that, given the negative impact that I think this structure is going to have. So scope and scale, they're building essentially a 30-foot house that will be almost twice the size of our home. We will be oppressed by this looming house at every turn. The rules constitute a limit for automatic denial. They do not provide entitlement and they do not provide permission. Even separate from our house, this proposed structure is more than twice the size of the largest house on the street. So when people talk about these other two-story houses, the majority of these other two-story houses are literally almost half the size of the one they're proposing. So if you look down the street at our neighbor Sloan's house, it's 2,000 square feet. Their house is much larger than this proposed, than the other two-story homes. So it's just oversized and out of scale for the neighborhood. The garage is excessive, period. I can talk about the things that Sean and Cleena addressed, but they already said those. Shade, we will be looking at a large blocky wall rather than sky and light. We will be shaded, if you look at the shade information that they provided, and they will be shaded most of the time, and it will be dramatically impacting our privacy. Privacy, of course, and shade are two very important things for the board, the commission to look at. We believe in progress and updating and improving our neighborhood, but this blatantly disregards the town's mission to uphold the character and integrity of the neighborhoods. At this point, we've seen no modifications to the plans to address our concerns. We had conversations with them. Yes, they did show us the plans ahead of time. But in fact, the only change that was made after those concerns were voiced was to increase the size of the garage. Therefore, they actually went in the opposite direction. They said they don't want an adversary relationship, and we don't want that either. But to have our input ignored right out of the gate makes it tricky to navigate these challenging conversations. There are many options to build on this lot. It is a large lot, and so there's a lot of positive outcome that could come from this. They also have redone homes in the past, a number of them. So please take into account that while they say this is their forever home, we don't know that.
Please wrap up, Stacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, I just want to say that the neighborhood, it has a negative impact on the neighborhood and more than just on our family. And we want to support change, but in a way that actually upholds the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Nancy L. has her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute when you're ready.
There we go. Hi, I'm Nancy Lay and I live at 28 Mohawk, also a longtime resident. And I have very similar concerns to what the Cleena O'Donnell and the Prince Westerhoffs have spoken to. I think the house is too big and massive and bulky for the neighborhood. I think the balconies and the tall decks are very invasive to one's privacy. In particular, I can imagine having the back second story balcony, the view from there, that they would be able to look nearly down the entire length of Mohawk into everyone's backyard. So I don't think it's appropriate for the neighborhood, and aesthetically the house has a very large, kind of massive, massive sort of blocky feeling to it, which I don't also believe is appropriate for the neighborhood. Last, one of the other things I would say is that the 3-car garage that's in or over the rear setback I think is inappropriate. And as Sean Westerhoff stated, that variance should be reserved where it's needed for a situation, say, such as Christmas Tree Hill. So I too have other things to say, but I don't think this project, as it is currently, it fits in with the character of the street. And it may be, when you look at other homes in Madera Gardens that are newer homes that are built further back around the lagoons and whatnot, it might be more in keeping with that portion of Madera Gardens, but I don't think it is on Mohawk in particular. Thank you.
Nancy?
Thank you. We have, I'm sorry, I don't have a first name. We have Robinson here. Go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not immediately impacted by this project. I live in Madera Gardens. We've owned a home in Madera Gardens since 1997, and I know that there were many battles fought just to deal with the issue of a second story. I think that battle has been fought and won. I remember the great time that was required by Larry Chin on Burst, who spent 2 or 3 years getting his second story built on his property. But I do share with some of the concerns expressed by the adjoining property owners. It's certainly a 3-car garage, and a carport is certainly a new phenomena in Madera Gardens. I don't know of any other home that has that, and I recognize their unique circumstances and the size of this property and the reasons stated why they included that in their property. But my question is whether or not the town could consider something. I know it was described as modern, but it's certainly modern, but does not necessarily, in my opinion, give a residential appearance. And the concern I have is basically it emulates the home that was approved and constructed not too long ago on Lakeside that looks like a 3-story birthday cake or a dental office. I've had a number of people visit my house and describe it in that manner. I don't mean to be facetious, but with this house that's being proposed, you've got 1 story stacked on top of the other story. And I'm wondering, and this is just a wonder on our part, if this home could not be evaluated in comparison to the home that is being constructed currently on Mohawk, which is near Lakeside, which is not a 2-story house, at least from the street, but has been raised to meet FEMA requirements. But much of the house has been constructed in the rear, which gives it more of a residential appearance, in my opinion. We're all art critics. We all have, beauties in the eye of the beholder, but those are primarily my comments relative to the home. And I hope that the sales are able to come up with a compromise and hopefully build their home and become residents of our town and enjoy our communities as we all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Okay, we have Tim Rose. Go ahead, Tim, and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just here with my wife. We live at 524 Tamalpais Drive. We are right behind where the garage is, and I just want to, at the pump station, so right behind the house. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. I'll try and be as brief as I can. A lot of our comments, have already been addressed, but we do live very, very close to Mohawk. We do respect everybody's position. Obviously, a lot of the folks that are talking right now are directly impacted by this. But our concerns are specific to the scale and design of the project. In no way the Sale family, I've had a couple of discussions with them. They're very, very kind. I just wanted to focus on the style and the proposed structure. Mainly the balcony that they're proposing off their master bedroom is going to have a direct line of sight into all of our backyard, as well as pretty much 75% of our living space. We have a small home with 3 kids. This pandemic, our home has basically been our our whole entire life. So the privacy is obviously the big concern there, as well as the size of the structure. I mean, I don't want to basically reinvent the wheel here or talk about it, but it is an excessive size compared to all of the other, I mean, it's just disproportionate. Regarding the design style, I mean, it impacts the character of our community. I think I appreciate them trying to do, basically create this modern style, but it is grossly inconsistent and not really, it's inharmonious with the surrounding homes. Also, the structure objects the view of the landscape. So a lot of people have commented on the mountain range, even the skylight, even just costing us blue sky that we've enjoyed, that our kids have really enjoyed over the last year, and natural light. And then I mean, I think that basically sums up really what our concerns are. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to all of our comments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have,
Before we get to that one, Tracy, we have
to take a vote.
Yeah, take a vote.
sorry,
then.
thank you.
Who will continue, with votes for continuing till 10:30? Raise your hand on the screen if it's a yes. Okay.
Okay.
We're good to go till 10:30.
Thank you. Next, we have John O'Donnell. I'm going to need to promote him to panelist. He's using a version of Zoom that doesn't allow me to unmute him. So if that's okay with you, Chair Chase,
Yes.
we'll do that while he has his 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm John O'Donnell. I live in 22 Mohawk Avenue, and I strongly oppose the plans for 24 Mohawk. The new structure is just way too big, does not fit in with the community. At almost 30 feet is way too tall. It's got a front balcony and on the second story, front and back, which will steal any privacy from the surrounding neighborhood. There's plenty of land on this property to keep it a 1-story. They can extend out the back like we did. We added 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and we have plenty of room for the 6 of us. As far the 3-car garage at the back, at 714 square feet, 13 feet high, sloping down to 8 feet, it's way too big. It would be next to us in our backyard. It would block our view of trees and limit our view of Mount Tam. It would also add noise and air pollution. And who knows what they would turn it into in a few years. It could become an Airbnb or whatever they want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
So I need to make sure that I send him back here. Take just a second. In the meantime, we have Laura von Wahlberg. Go right ahead when you're ready, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura von Wahlberg. I live at 38 Lakeside Drive. Oh, the dental office, but Rusty made me say that. Anyways, we support the sales project. We know Britt and Spencer from when they lived on Seminole. Our 6-year-olds are friends, and Spencer is the Cub Scout leader. So in addition to giving our support for their project, we also built a 2-story house a couple of years ago in the neighborhood. And after reading the comments that were sent in for tonight's meeting and some of the comments that have been shared today, there seems to be an emphasis on the 2nd story component of their project, which was the same for when we were doing our project. And 2nd stories are common in our neighborhood now. Since we've built our house, there have been 2 on Birch that have been approved, 1 on Arrowhead that's been built. So I would just hope that people who are working with the sales can focus more on things like privacy and massing and light, because I do think when we were doing our project, that was more productive. And I know the sales are really willing to do all of that. So they're awesome people, and we wish them the best.
Thank you very much. Okay.
An additional hand up, Mr. Wilborg. Go ahead when you're ready. You need to unmute yourself.
We live in this neighborhood. That house is 70 years old. I live in one of these ticky-tacky little houses, and I've been here for 35 years. To see someone come in and want to improve our neighborhood, to make it better, to put money into our neighborhood, that's a great thing, as opposed to these little houses that we're in. They've complied with, it seems to me, they've complied with all the rules. The views, I mean, we've had to deal with a lot of views, but the thing is that there's no deed, there's no view that anybody else has that shows them a right to have a view. That's just something that's been made up. So everybody wants that. So here's the real problem. This is more dangerous and nefarious than the one I was talking about, the other project. This process pits neighbors against neighbors. The sales were talking about an adversarial relationship. They don't want that, but the town has set this up. This is not nice for our community. You're dividing us. You are pitting one against the other. And what you're doing is you're encouraging all of our town people to violate rule number 10. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods or property. That's what we're doing. The house looks fine. I have an opinion about what it looks like, how the height is. They've got rules that they've got to deal with. But that's just my opinion. Everybody has an opinion, and all of you on the Planning Commission has an opinion, but I'm not right. My opinion isn't perfect, and none of yours is either. So why is it that we want to put on all these different design rules and things upon them when none of us has that kind of knowledge or information?
There, I guess Mr. Wilberg is completed with his commentary. Yes, okay.
Okay, well, see any more hands raised, Chair Chase?
Okay, and no.
No emails.
Okay.
There was one procedural Q&A question that I answered.
Okay.
Offline.
All right, Mr. Boyle.
Yes, so I have, starting in order in which they appear, I have a fairly long email. I don't know if you want to limit me to 3 minutes.
I will.
From Mr. Just the name of Tor, T-O-R, at 526 Tamalpais. He writes, Town of Corte Madera, I wish to express I strongly oppose construction of a 2-story home at 24 Mohawk Avenue. The personal impact to me will be much greater than my neighbors of Madera Gardens, yet their concerns are just as valid as the precedent this starts. In the interest of being concise, I will hit the bullet points which could be elaborated at length. 1, Madera Gardens is a development with a 70-year history of many families, neighbors, and community thriving. FEMA 4-foot foundations potentially exceed realistic needs given my neighborhood property did not flood in 1983. Design Review Board would be a great aid in managing designs that grossly divert from character and charm of a neighborhood. We love Corte Madera for our blue sky, trees, and especially our views of the surrounding ridge lines and peaks. We enjoy luxury of feeling immersed in nature and live in a community of like-minded neighbors we look in the eye, smile, and say hello to as we pass them on the street. Expansion to any home should consider the lowest impact and especially intrusion relative to their neighbors and community. Ideally, a remodel should blend and inspire a creative evolution in a community. Though I don't agree with the 4-foot lifts, the impact is somewhat manageable with vegetation as it exceeds realistic fence height. This property has an amazing potential for a new home bordering the commercial property and park. It is isolated from the encroachment feelings of neighbors on all sides. After 30 years, I will attest this is a very unique aspect I have grown to love about the properties on our corner. Specifically to personal opposition, I lose an obstructive view of nature. More specifically, I have a single home rising into a beautiful view, becoming a more than just a blight. It will rob me of peace and privacy in my backyard. I have 3 homes of 4 around me with trampolines, 2 of which frequently limit access to relaxing in my hot tub. Bouncing kids are one thing, a second story with windows and balconies take it to the extreme. Why I would caution anyone from building up: 1, you're gaining unattractive views of rooftops until other second stories start sprouting around you. 2, your views into neighbors' yards are an invasion of their privacy. 3, you're sharing views into your bedrooms are not welcome. 4, you're going to have greater exposure to freeway noise. 5, nobody uses upstairs decks. 6, you're seen and not appreciated by many. 7, you show a deep disrespect and lack of concern for your impact on neighbors. 8, starts the overdevelopment, ending the charm of our neighborhood.
Time's up.
Okay. Thank you. The second one is from Gene Berg. This came on today at 5 o'clock. Dear members of the Planning Commission, Phil Boyle, Senior Planner, and Adam Wolf, Planning Director. As an owner and resident of my home at 28 Mohawk, I have enjoyed the many fine aspects of Madera Gardens. I was a young career woman who came upon the house and was smitten when we pulled into the driveway. I still love the house, my neighbors, and generosity of spirit and care we take with one another and the land we occupy. I like the fact that the neighborhood wasn't filled with McMansions. These homes and lots aren't generally large. I believe they were intended to be starter homes. The proposed house is not in keeping with the volume and massing of other homes on this older section of Madera Gardens and Mohawk Avenue specifically. I believe the project that has been submitted by the sales is wholly unsuited to Madera Gardens and Mohawk Avenue. The building's block light for its neighbors. It is too tall for the neighborhood and should be moved further from the street frontage. It also removes any privacy for most of the yards along Mohawk that back up to the flood canal and neighbors behind them. I can tell you, having a neighbor look directly into my bedrooms and bathrooms from their elevated home is very, very unpleasant and unsettling. No amount of shrubbery will fix it. If it did, we would be missing out on the light. I agree with the letters submitted by the O'Donnells and the Prince Westerhoff family. Nancy Lay, 28 Mohawk. Next, I have 3 that are on electronically. Who does that? Okay, this is from Jolie DeVille Bis. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Hi, Phil, in the planning department. I've reviewed the planning commission's agenda and details related to the proposed construction at 24 Mohawk. I have several concerns with the proposal, and the letter from Meredith Wiskensky included in the staff report details them well. To summarize, growth and expansion of homes should be supported. Please consider the character of the neighborhood. A 3-car garage plus a carport is out of scale for this neighborhood. The square footage of the proposed garage is 714 square foot, almost 80% of square footage of the current house. The shed style roof, while modern in style, presents sharp angles that are in harsh contrast with the surrounding homes and larger community. The corner lot does have limitations given its narrow street frontage, but the lot is large. The design could take advantage of the large lot and build a house with a larger ground floor and a smaller recessed second. The current design, north and south elevations, are large stucco walls that look like an apartment building. There is precedent for asking residents to add additional, quote, articulation to their design, as was required in the design of 34 Mohawk and another two-story house on the street. Finally, we are very concerned about the loss of blue sky for the neighbors at 26 Mohawk. They will lose a significant amount of sunlight, and their side yard looks like it will be shaded the majority of the day. Although the design is within the 6-foot setback, a 30-foot tall structure will significantly encroach on the neighbors at 26 Mohawk. Thank you, Joelle and Joel, Deville Bis, 40 Mohawk Avenue. Okay, next is Mercedes Rose. Submitted a letter as well as an email, and I'll read the email. Dear Phil, here's a copy of a letter shown here in the body of the email for the meeting scheduled today via Zoom. Warmly, Mercedes Rose. Dear Planning Board and neighbors, we are attending this meeting to present our concerns regarding 24 Mohawk residential project. Our comments are relevant as we live within a very close proximity to 24 Mohawk. We would do respect everyone's opinion. I would like to emphasize that not all commentators and comments will be directly relevant to this project. And as such, please take into consideration the relationship of the individuals to the family, and most importantly, the proximity of their home to proposed home at 24 Mohawk. Our concerns are specific to the scale and design of this project. Despite adherence to the objective guidelines set forth by the city, not at the sales, family, or updating homes and the town of Corte Madera. Scale, including height and design style of the proposed structure. Second story, total height of the structure and balcony interferes with privacy of surrounding residential properties, as you would be able to look into yards and directly into homes. This alone can affect the value of surrounding properties. Structural size is dominant and conspicuous, which is disproportionate to surrounding residential structures. Design style impacts the character of our community, is grossly inconsistent and inharmonious with surrounding homes and overall townscape. Structure obstructs the view of landscaping, i.e. mountain range and skyline. Structure obstructs direct and indirect light to surrounding residences, solar access. We kindly request that should these plans pass the review. We have available applications of this lot and have read the building codes and zoning ordinances based upon our best understanding of these codes and ordinances. There are other options that can be considered with respect to the neighborhood and neighbors, particularly with an estimated lot size of 0.29 acres, 12,789 square feet. Given the size of the property with respect to residential building codes and zoning ordinances, they can build a single-story structure and achieve their desired square footage discreetly and with less impact to surrounding neighbors and community, as well as townscape. Thank you for your consideration of our comments. Mercedes and Tim Rose, family at 524 Tamalpais Drive. And that is all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Sure.
A lot of reading there. Okay. So we have no more hands up. We have no more commentary. Is that correct, Tracy?
No more hands raised.
Okay.
And no additional emails.
Right. Then we're going to close the public comment section of this item. And we have 10 minutes before we have to vote to go for another 15 minutes. So I'm going to start in with you guys and ask for your feedback on this item. I'll start with you, Margaret.
I have been by that lot. And I also went by 38 Lakeside, which is the other very large house. I think this house is not even remotely related to the size and character of the neighborhood. I think there's it just doesn't fit in. And I think that anything that blocks a view of Mount Tam, and when you walk by and you're on the sidewalk, you're not seeing Mount Tam because of the size, the looming size. It's a real detriment to the neighborhood. I think that the garage in the back doesn't bother me. I grew up on the East Coast and everybody has a garage in the back. And that part of it doesn't bother me. I don't know why a 3-car garage is needed and a carport. It just seems that everything in this house is excessive, and a house like this just does not really work in that neighborhood. And I think that one of the most important parts of the town plan is that the neighborhoods are cohesive and work together. I think you can have a modern house and a ranch style house and cottage style house, and I think they can be harmonious with a little creative thought, but I don't think this one works in that way.
Okay. Thank you. Phyllis, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I have a lot to say. The first thing I want to say, and this is a generalization that has to be understood because of comments that have been made, that there should be absolutely no assumption that a project requiring no variances should be approved. That doesn't assure approval. All it shows is that these are the stated limitations of any design. And once again, as I say, it's not permission to construct as such. Just an aside here, Mr. Wilberg, who stated that we don't have the knowledge to do anything, probably does not realize that this is probably at this point, the one planning commission in the county that is made up of people with architectural degrees, construction knowledge, flood control experts, etc. We were not put on it because we supported somebody running for the city council, which is the norm. So we do know something about what we're talking about. I went ahead and I looked at the general plan because at least 2 of the letters that came in stated that the town, that I guess it was the applicant was told that the town prefers second stories to expansion. That isn't true. I don't know how that was misconceived. Reading from the general plan, it talks about design approaches that break up the mass of wall planes, including features such as recessed second stories above the first floor, variation of wall plan, the use of dormers, substantial eave overhangs, etc. This is straight up and down. Further, in the guidelines, 1830.030, it states it very clearly. In all residential districts, single-story design is encouraged. With that in mind, this particular home, looking at the rendering that was done, that's on the front page of the plans, brought 2 things to mind. Number one, anybody who was wondering what SB 10, which is on the governor's desk, which would allow a small apartment house on single family zoning, what the effect would be on the homes around it. Just have to look at this picture. This is oversized, overmassed, absolutely does not fit in with the homes on either side. The second thing brought to mind is this commission spent almost 3 years working with the Best Western Hotel, and we would make recommendations, and the Grialou family that owns the hotel would come back with tweaking this and tweaking that, and it would lead to more problems and more problems. And after 3 years, we finally just had to throw up our hands and say, hey, forget it, sit down, relax, and come back with a different design, which they have done. We've seen a preliminary study. This home does not belong in this neighborhood. Additionally, we keep on talking about that it's a 42 square foot, 2-story, a single home. That's the total of the FAR. There's also an additional 1,019 feet that is not considered the living space that goes into the FAR that's added onto it. The decks, the porches, and that small section of the front porch, which brings you up to 5,261 square foot of home. That is far more than what belongs in this neighborhood. If you're looking for it, Jim, it's on the front page of the plans, middle column underneath the rendering of what the house will look at. I really think we would be wasting our time, the time of the sales family, the time of the neighbors, by trying to give recommendations of, oh, remove the porch, remove the deck, make the garage smaller. None of this is going to make this a home that is compatible with the neighborhood. Good design is supposed to be integrated into the environment and the community. This home is not. It makes no difference what this home looks like. If you like the design, if you like the style, it's not integrated into the neighborhood. And one of the things we have to look at is not only the applicant's wishes and the property rights, but the impact upon concerns and needs of the neighbors in the community. This is just not going to work. It should be looked upon by the sales of discarding this plan and starting again. I think they've had enough input from the neighbors to show what their concerns are. And I'm not going to say they're all valid, they aren't. But it just doesn't fit. I drove around the neighborhood, I looked at 38, I looked at the other homes. This doesn't belong there. Somebody referred to it as a McMansion, which I think is something that everybody has a different opinion of what it is, but I think what the person was saying is how oversized it is for the other homes. And that part I have to agree with. So I cannot see any way that I could ever see this meets the findings, no matter what is written in, submitted by, I don't know if it was the owner or his father, the architect, who wrote it. It just does not work. So that's all I have to say at this point. It doesn't pay, Peter, for me to go into details of this is wrong or that is wrong, because the entirety just does not work.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phyllis. At this moment, then, we have Dr. Bundy to hear from, and Jim to hear from, and myself. So we have 10:30, we have to vote to continue. We have to have a unanimous vote. So I vote to continue and be done. Margaret? Thank you. Okay. Dr. Bundy.
Yeah, I really want to come to defense of the three-car garage that they're proposing in the back. I'm in a subdivision, Mariner Cove, that also is seeing a lot of houses raised because we're in the FEMA flood zone. And it really makes it very difficult to design the garage into the house when you elevate the house. If you go around the neighborhood, you'll see things just don't look right. And because of the pie-shaped lot, the narrow front, creating a three-car garage in the back that you drive along the side to get to that doesn't have to be elevated, I think is really something that is beneficial to the neighborhood from the standpoint that you're going to keep cars off the street that would be there if you tried to put a two-car garage, in a new house on the street there. And it would look peculiar given that you have to raise the house as high as you do, which FEMA mandates and we don't have any control over, even though you're protected by levees. And I'm in an area that is subject to direct sea level rise and tidal inundation. I think the look of the house is really very creative. I think the roof design really works well with the house. I think the space that has been designed for you is really a great use of space. However, I agree with Phyllis that it would need to be on a much larger lot with more separation from the other houses, or in a community of similar homes, that it really doesn't work as a two-story in this particular setting. If you look around, all of the two stories that have been approved by the Planning Commission over the years, and particularly over the last 6-8 years since I think Peter has been chair, they've all been sort of integrated mostly into the existing house. Now, this is different because it's a brand new house, but all of them, as we saw in the 317 Redwood before this proposal, that the second story has some setback from the at least 2 or 3 of the sides, rather than sitting over the existing footprint of the lower floor. So I think it may well be possible to design a second story, which is smaller. You'll have to have a larger footprint, I believe, of the house if you can't find a way to just do it on one level and move the house further into the back. And when you do come back with a proposal, it sounds like the Planning Commission is going to have to go to a whole bunch of houses to really look at the story poles and look at the issue with the views and the shading a little more carefully. But I think I'm really asking also for a redesign with less mass. And when you come back, you're going to have to explain how you're protecting the privacy of your neighbors, which is an issue that comes up in all second stories, and usually there's a way to deal with it. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, that leads me to you, Mr. Rizzo.
Yes. So I'd like the applicants, I was concentrating on the findings, really start finding 1, 4, and 6, where 1 talks about the conformance with the general plan, and particularly chapter 5, when we're talking about strong neighborhood character and preserving privacy and sunlight. I think that will lead into kind of the design intent, a new design intent in which if you are going to go ahead with a second story, that it would be set back from the sides and the front, and have a little bit more articulation of massing. I also did want to talk about the 3-car garage, because I think I like the idea of having that driveway on the side. It actually creates a little buffer. But as you go back further into the lot, there is an opportunity to pull that garage back closer to the house. And maybe that storage component sits behind a two-car garage in which everybody could have what they want. You know, the storage and the two-car garage, but maybe it's closer to the house, not blocking any views, and would also allow for a stepped feature in the massing of the house. And I would, you know, concur with the other commissioners that, you know, I think we need to come, there is so much square footage to work with on this lot that I know the applicants can come back with a stronger proposal that will meet the findings. Now that we've talked about them and what the community's concerns are, I think the design's out there. And I think the other commissioners have said just about everything else I was going to say on here, so I don't want to regurgitate it. But I'd really like to see it, the applicants come back with a different massing scheme, being a little bit more sensitive to the neighborhood, specifically the adjacent properties, concentrating on some of the sunlight and visual impact and massing issues. There's also a floor-to-floor height of 10 feet, I believe, and a 9 foot that could probably be help out a little bit in bringing the mass down. So those are all things that maybe the applicants can take into consideration on their next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. When I look at this, I agree with Dr. Bundy that I think that the house is attractive in itself. It just doesn't belong here. It belongs next to the B of A building over there. So it's the wrong design for this neighborhood, in my opinion, and that it doesn't have the articulation needed or the reduction of mass that it needs to have to fit into this neighborhood to be a second story in this area. There's many other options on how to come about an articulated design that does not have this sense of mass with it. It's an architectural challenge, and I put it back to you to actually achieve that. To max it out at 30 foot in height is the wrong approach for this neighborhood. You have to drop it down, as Jim says, and get a foot out of it on the first floor and maybe a little more on the second floor if you're going to do that. But you could step back the design in many ways such that this would not appear to be a large box on the lot. I would agree that the 3-car garage in back needs to be altered in its location and its height. I understand you like the contemporary style of everything out here in this neighborhood or in this design, but it just doesn't fit. So there's ways to make a contemporary design without going to these shed roofs. You can do something very cool that would have shapes and so forth that are not as tall. And I think you could arrive at that even as much as you might like this architecture. So here we are. You've got a pretty solid commission set of opinions that talk about the house out of scale with the neighborhood, about the height of the project for the neighborhood, that it invades the neighborhood, and that the mandate to you is to scale it down, scale it back, and come up with a different set of parameters. I think a different design program would be appropriate given the reaction to this contemporary design in a 1950s neighborhood. But you could contemporize the 1950s design to come up with something that would be very cool. That's my opinion about this. That's not necessarily the opinion of the commission, but it's too much. So I don't know how else to paraphrase this and bring in the input of the other commissioners, but I think you've heard it pretty strongly. So with that said, here we are at 10:40, and we have 5 minutes left for this meeting to wind up. So I think that As sad as I am to give you such a strong set of rebuttals to this, I think that you have to listen to this and listen to your neighbors and start over.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, we kind of been faced in the last couple of days of feedback coming in, which is not much of a surprise. We've got a lot of good notes here. That's all the things we're going to look to address. So, stay tuned. We'll work with Bill and get a lot as many of these incorporated as we can, and reach back out to all the neighbors. We have a lot of comments. That contact info that we didn't have before for neighbors that we hadn't been in touch with, through our own outreach. So, it's all good feedback, and we'll incorporate all of it that we can.
And just, it's really late. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this. We do really appreciate it. Obviously, sounds like this isn't the right design for the neighborhood, but like Spencer said, we'll take all this back and take a look to see what we can do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, we'll close that item on our agenda, and we have 4 minutes left. We could do something worthwhile, and we could vote to approve the minutes if we so choose.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Which minutes are those?
We're tired.
Yeah.
The Planning Commission meeting minutes of July 27th, 2021.
Okay, good.
Another lifetime.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
All
wasn't.
in favor of going to bed?
Aye. All right, so we'll reserve Bob Bundy's council report for next session.
Excellent suggestion.
Thank you.
And I will just say real quick, I am going to do a presentation to the town council on the housing element work plan at the next council meeting. So I'm happy to report on that at our next planning commission meeting. But if you're interested in seeing the presentation live, you're welcome to do so. And I'm happy to also just recap that for the planning commission at the next meeting as well as a discussion item or just an informational item.
Okay. Adam, that's the same meeting that the Simon appeal
Correct.
is
Yes.
on?
Yes. Correct.
Long meeting they're gonna have.
Yeah.
Before we leave, in case anybody wondered, the governor has not been recalled from the first half hour of returns. He has been ahead by approximately 2/3 of the vote.
Okay.
It's the amount of the no has been between 66 and 67% from the very, very beginning. Within about 40 minutes of the balloting closing, he actually got up and made his speech talking about being reelected. So it's been very interesting. And we do not have to worry about the feds budgeting reparations for the former slaveholders before the Civil War, as Mr. Elder wants.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Hard not to check the polls during the meeting, so thank you for
Yes.
bringing the news.
All right, with that said, then we will adjourn this meeting and we'll say goodnight to everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you,
Thank you.
Peter and Phil.